Amy?
Yeah. Kendra Foley.
Here.
Andrew, yep.
No, you don't, because it's.
Oh, that's right, too.
Mark Sedaris.
Yep, he's present.
John Ford.
Present.
David Stokes.
Present.
Lindsay Mossman.
Present.
Lily Reed.
Present.
Amy Donahue?
Present.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is student academic recognition. These are letters of commendation for some high school students from the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. Turn it over to the superintendent.
Excellent. We are so excited this evening to share with our community that we have had several students this year that have been commended as part of the National Merit Scholarship Program. We've invited the high school principal, Joe Jacobazzi, here this evening to provide some information to the community about what an honor that is and announce who those students are that were the lucky recipients of that honor.
Thank you, Dr. Galston. I'm going to read the press release submitted to the in a memorandum to the school committee. The principal of Watertown High School announced that 8 seniors have been named commended students in the 2021 National Merit Scholarship Program. A letter of commendation from the school and National Merit Scholarship Corporation, which conducts the program, has been mailed to each scholastically talented senior. About 34,000 commended students throughout the nation are being recognized for their exceptional academic promise. Although they will not continue in the 2021 competition for the National Merit Scholarship Award, commended students placed among the top 50,000 scores of more than 1.5 million students who entered the 2021 competition by taking the 2019 preliminary SATs, so the PSATs. So the following seniors have received a letter of commendation and received a follow-up phone call from myself. Henry Usum, Thomas Powderly, Maud Neely, Harriet Neely, Rita Hackett, Carolyn Gully, Allison Fitzpatrick, and Diane Bunwet. And I can't say enough good things about these and all of our students, but it is an incredible honor. This is the most we've had in anyone's recollection, so we're so proud of our students, and you'll be getting a letter and a certificate in the mail shortly. So thank you for the time, Chairman Ports.
Well, thank you for reading that, and congratulations to all those students. That's great. Congratulations. It's doing a great job, and we wish you all the best in the next couple of years ahead as you transition from Watertown High. Next item on the agenda is the public forum. I'm actually going to, I know that a number of people are probably here to speak with respect to one of our action items, which is the phasing of grades to hybrid instruction. The superintendent's going to speak on that. And I'm going to move the public forum to after that, because I think people have questions, and it may be that the superintendent's presentation will help to answer that. So if there's no objection, I'm going to move the public forum. Let me move to Teaching and Learning Showcase. Dr. Galston.
Excellent. Well, we are very excited this evening to be at the Lowell Elementary School. As has been spoken to about in a previous school committee meeting, and a tradition that we started last year but had to abruptly end in the middle of the year. The school committee will be hosting meetings in several of the buildings, and the goal is to provide the school community with information about some of the exciting happenings within the school and to highlight the great work of our teachers and students along the way. So unlike last year where we actually were in the Lowell Elementary School, we are starting this year again at the Lowell Elementary School, but in the virtual setting. So I'm going to hand it over to Principal Phelan, who has invited some of our staff members who would like to share a little bit about their experiences so far in school. And I'm trying to read them.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lowell School. Even though it's virtually this evening, we're so thrilled to have you. It's always a pleasure to be able to host a school committee meeting and kind of showcase what we're doing here at the Lowell. There's been a lot that's gone into opening up this school year, more than I can even probably recount or you'd want to hear about right now. It'd go on for days, but this was a very unusual year, and it took a lot to get to where we are right now. It was a journey that started this summer with our task force, and then our task force joined our instructional leadership team, and we started to develop a plan that was specific to Lowell, but actually worked in coordination with all the other schools here in Watertown. After we kind of got that all organized and started to kind of lay out our foundation for what we wanted to see happen this year and how we would welcome our teachers back and then our students, we did in fact welcome our teachers back along with our IA instructional assistants and all of our staff. We spent 13 days together building our community, thinking about what we needed to do to get ready for our kiddos. We enjoyed very rich professional development, and we were able to kind of get together and just decompress and become who we are as a faculty. September 1st then led into September 28th when we were lucky enough to welcome back our first group of students, which was so exciting. We were able to bring in our sub-separate programs. We had 2 programs here this year at the Lowell. One is LSP and the other one is ISP. We welcomed 18 students on that first day, and it was just an absolute joy. The smiles were amazing, not just for the kiddos, but for our teachers. On the 29th, we welcomed in another 26 children. These students were our ELL students, our English learners. We welcomed them into the building. We got them reacclimated to our classroom and our school. For some of them, we actually welcomed them here. They are newcomers to our country and to our school. And then on the 6th, we welcomed even further more students. And those were our inclusion students that received special education services here at the Lowell, and then even some of our 504s. Even on October 13th, we further brought in more kids, and then we were really at 81 students that are now currently coming to school up between 5 and 2 days a week. It's been a success. It's been amazing to see the kids come into the building and the teachers responding to the children. I have to be honest, I had so many teachers asking me, can I get them in for 2 more days? Can we do just 2 more days, Stacy? Because we really want them here more with us. The staff has been fantastic. We've had a lot of support by the people that are coming in and just teaching remotely, supporting the in-person teachers, and the kids make all the difference. So I'm excited to further welcome even more of our students back shortly, and I look forward to it. Tonight now, the grade 5 team is going to take an opportunity to tell you kind of like what they do here and what they've been doing behind the scenes to support our children. So I want to give a big warm welcome to Kathy Burton, one of our newest teachers in the district, Ann Sudby, Elizabeth Walker, and Stephanie Broder. Thank you for participating in our showcase tonight, and take it away, ladies.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Stephanie Broder, one of the 5th grade teachers at the Lowell. Is it okay if we share our screen? We have a presentation.
Yes, I just said that.
Okay. Here we go. So we wanted to talk to you tonight. First of all, we want to thank you so much for the invitation to share and showcase some of the work we've been doing with our 5th graders at the Lowell. We're very excited to be here and show you some of the things we've been working on with them. Tonight, you're going to hear from 4 5th grade classroom teachers from the Lowell, but we want to recognize that we're really a small part of a much bigger team, both at our grade level, our school level, and our district level. And even on top of that, really at a community level, this year more than ever, it's shown how important the families, administrators, teachers, students, community members, and everyone in between, how much it takes to support our students to make sure learning happens no matter what it looks like. And so big thank you to all of those people out there who have prioritized learning and helped make this year, our kickoff a success. So we're from the 5th grade, and I want to tell you that the 5th grade is a very exciting year. It's this really special age and this really special grade where students are on the verge of some big changes, academically and socially. Academically, these 5th graders are going to be leaving us at the end of the year and taking that big leap to the middle school where they're going to have an increased academic demand, and we need to prepare them for that. And then socially, they're at this age where they're starting to figure out who they are as people and their identity. And they're really starting to form their opinions on issues in their community and ideas about, do I like school? And that's really important time to help those students form ideas and help guide them to places where they can learn more to help themselves kind of, figure out who they want to be. It's also a time where fifth graders, if you know any fifth graders, they sometimes also get this idea that they already know everything. And that's a teenager starting, and we're like, no, stop. Like, you're too young. It's not that time yet. But what that means too is they're at an age where we almost have to reignite their curiosity and wonder in learning, especially because they're going to be heading into higher grade levels with higher academic demand. And having that curiosity and wonder is going to help them persevere through the academic and social challenges ahead for them. And underneath that all, as if that isn't enough, they are at a point where they've acquired this really diverse set of skills, and they've laid this solid foundation, and they're ready to build on them and take their learning and their thinking to a whole new level. It's very exciting. It's a very exciting year. So when our team got together and we were thinking about what we wanted to showcase tonight, we decided that we really wanted to focus on our approach to teaching these students. And when we think about our approach as a team, it's really made up of 4 major components. Okay? And so tonight, we're going to talk briefly about each of these components and how we've adapted it for the virtual classroom. And to get us started, we have Miss Ann Sudbay to kick us off with community and connection.
Thanks, Stephanie. No one wants to follow Stephanie anymore. It's too exciting. So for those who don't know me, I'm Ann Sudbay. I'm a 5th grade teacher, and I co-teach with Liz Walker, who will be speaking next. So going into this year, the big question was, would we be able to foster community and make connections with students and families in a remote learning environment? And the answer is yes. Yes, we can. And yes, we did. The key to community building is communication. And so this fall, we've worked to create open lines of dialogue with students, families, and our colleagues. In the classroom setting, students need to feel safe and respected and engaged to be successful learners. So leaning heavily on responsive classroom components, such as morning meetings, closing circle, and norm setting, we are really working to ensure that all students have a voice and that their voices are heard. We're also leveraging technology tools like breakout room discussions in Zoom and comments and collaboration in Google Classroom to foster dialogue and create a really vibrant, connected learning environment for our students. Equally important as classroom connection to student success is family engagement. So we began the year with these joyful welcome meetings with students and families. We also collaborate weekly as a team on our SMORE newsletters, just to be sure that families are informed and engaged in student learning. And we're maintaining two-way dialogue with families via emails and Zoom meetings. So moving on to the wider community, we are so thankful to have a talented and dedicated group of specialists and service providers working with our students. We're also thankful for the weekly time we have with our ELA and math coaches and our grade level colleagues across the district. This time we spend sharing ideas, strategies, and best practices has a direct and positive impact on the work we do with our classroom communities, and it helps us make connections. So with that, I'm going to pass it to my co-teacher, Liz Walker.
Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Walker. So I'm a special education co-teacher for 5th grade at the Lowell School. And as Ann said, I work directly with her in the co-taught classroom. So I want to talk a little bit about how we take access and support into consideration when working in the virtual realm. And what we really put our heads together to do is to think about how we can provide structures that are going to be consistent and easy for students to use so that they know what the clear expectations are and should be able to navigate as much as they can on their own the different learning sites and materials we want them to. So one of the first things that we made sure all students have is having individual schedules in their Google Classroom. So for us in 5th grade, Google Classroom is where we are housing everything, and we structure it in a way that students can access it with a lot of independence. So we have made individual schedules for students that house all of their Zoom links and let them know what each day should look like for both their core days and their extension days. These Zoom links include the classroom links, but also include links for specials and also links for any service providers that students may work with. We also, on a weekly basis, provide assignment checklists for students so they can see their week at a glance, almost like an agenda of what they need to be completing. In previous years, we would have paper agendas that students would fill out in binders and carry back and forth. And this replaces that. They're able to use these checklists to plan for their days and also check them off as they're completing assignments along the way. When we post assignments in Google Classrooms, we create a topic for each week so that students know to just look in that week's topic to find everything that they need to find. And we label everything clearly with daily labels so they know anything marked with an M is for Monday, T for Tuesday, and so on. So that at a quick glance with the organization we've set in place, we can see all of those. They can find exactly what they need to find. And the other thing that Google Classroom allows us to do pretty seamlessly and without students really noticing the difference is that we can easily differentiate assignments. We are able to assign different versions of the same assignments with different levels of scaffolding support for different students depending on their needs. So it's not a one-size-fit-all program. We can really work to meet with students. So the slide we're looking at right now shows kind of a peek in Google Classroom we would see. So that new week of 1019 to 1023 would be what we would call our topic for the week. And you can see the assignment checklist is there, and all of the assignments for Monday are labeled with an M. And Stephanie, if we back up a little bit, there are also slides to show. This is a slide of an example of what a student's schedule may look like with the different links and times so they know where to go. And the next slide shows an example of what one assignment checklist may look like. The assignment checklists are also the ones we use. We divide our assignments into morning assignments and afternoon assignments. And students only have morning assignments assigned on their extension days, but every student has afternoon assignments that they complete after that 12:15 time. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna pass it on to Kathy Burton.
It's me first. Back to me.
Sorry, I'm going to pass it back to Stephanie.
Hello again. So one of the things we really work on with 5th graders, regardless of the year, is helping them build independence, especially since we've talked about, they're heading off to the middle school soon, and there's going to be an expectation that they take a little more responsibility for the work and for their schedule and keeping track of their things. And so we really are working not just on concepts and skills for standard-based skills for students, but underneath everything else, we're also working on these skills towards helping them be independent learners. On the left side here, we have time management, responsibility, and organization. And that's all about helping students set up systems to keep track of everything so that they can spend time, they can spend their bandwidth focusing on the learning. Okay, and Liz Walker said before, a lot of the tools we use to do that are the assignment checklists, the weekly schedules that they have access to, links, and just putting everything in Google Classroom itself, and students knowing that there is a place to go to get what they need has all been part of our strategy for helping them build independence in this remote world. Also, we work on some other skills like reflection and self-advocacy, knowing when to ask for help, and building their stamina and perseverance. These are things that we build into pretty much everything we do so that they can become more responsible and recognize within themselves what they know, what they need help with, and where to go to get that. Something else we heard from parents in the spring, we know was a big concern because the students needed a lot of support at home, especially with the technology. And it was taking up a lot of time. It was very overwhelming for a lot of families, especially families that had multiple students that all had classes and all were trying to use the computers at the same time. So as a district, we really, and as a team, the first couple weeks of school, we really planned a lot of assignments, a lot of those beginning of the year type assignments that were partially, I'm trying to think of a word, the purpose of which was partially to train them, students, to independently use a variety of tools that we would be using throughout the year. And Ms. Burton will talk about it a little more next, about what some of those tools look like. But we've really tried to keep that in mind and have the students be independent even with the technology that we're using. And then I'm going to pass it to Ms. Burton.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Byrne. I'm new to Watertown, so I just want to start with saying thank you for the warmest of welcomes to a fantastic district, and I'm really, really happy I'm here. So another focus that we have is ensuring that students are participating in engaging activities that challenge each of them at their own instructional level. So to ensure this focus becoming a reality, we have 4 components that sort of guide our approach. So this includes leveraging tools that enhance learning, providing work that matters, providing feedback and holding students accountable, and setting standard-based learning goals. So the foundation of providing a challenging and engaging curriculum in our current remote learning situation comes from a suite of tools that enhance online learning. And thanks to all the hard work of all the teachers who provided invaluable training about all the different online platforms, we were well positioned to implement them with students right on the first day of school. One online platform worth highlighting that we've been using is Flipgrid. It's a platform that allows students to record a short clip and then share it with their class. And we've used this for students to recommend books, introduce themselves, explain their math thinking, and respond to fun questions that help build our community. Another key component is really developing learning opportunities that matter for kids. So for the past 4 weeks, we have been developing assignments that help students learn and grow and really deepen their understanding of the world around them. Creating work that matters is important because it helps give us also a pulse on where students are in their progress and engages them in critical thinking, problem solving, and spurs curiosity, which is always fun with 5th graders. Along with providing work that matters to students, we've explored many ways that we can provide constructive feedback, which also increases accountability for completing those assignments. So this feedback is provided directly through Google Classroom comments, which can be individualized for each student. We can track students' work completion through Google Classroom, the platform, to easily assess kind of who's completing their work or who needs a little bit more support. And additionally, we provide verbal feedback within the Zoom breakout rooms, which helps students with their critical thinking, clarifies any confusion that they have, and creates opportunities for really constructive conversations. And lastly, the foundation to all that we are teaching really stems from the student-centered learning goals that our district coaches provide us and that are aligned with our 5th grade standards. So within those weekly meetings, we review next steps for students, discuss ways to better approach our teaching, and kind of plan that what best meets the need of our students. And with that, thank you. I'm going to pass it back to Ms. Broder to close out our presentation.
So just a final thank you to everyone for inviting us and listening to us. We're really proud of the work our students have done so far this year. Our 5th graders are working hard, and their resilience and effort and just overall attitude about school has been truly impressive. So thank you for letting us brag about them tonight and show some of the things that we've been working really hard on. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all 4 of you for your presentations and for all the work that you're doing. It's great. It's very exciting to hear. You know, the remote learning is always a challenge, certainly, and particularly in the elementary levels, it's a challenge. But I think you guys are a meeting that challenge. So thank you very much for all that you're doing. Anybody from the school committee have a question that they want to ask?
Lily has her hand up.
Sorry, Lily.
Not a question. I just want to also echo the thanks. 4 of us on the school committee have 5th grade children. So it's really exciting for us to hear kind of all of the incredible work that's happening. I know my daughter is absolutely loving This is Broder's class, and just it's just learning so much. She's getting a ton out of it. She's getting up extra early in the morning, actually. She's not normally an early riser, and she's been getting up early, excited for the day and wanting to do a really good job on her work. So whatever you guys are doing, keep doing it. Thank you. I'm excited just listening to you. It kind of makes me want to go back to 5th grade. So thank you guys so much for this presentation and for giving us some insight into what's happening.
Thanks, Lily. Anyone else, other questions or comments from anybody?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I just wanted to also give a shout out to the principal and the assistant principals who run morning meetings every day for the students even before school starts. So that might be why some of the kids are getting up even earlier, because they like to go to morning meetings. So it's pretty exciting.
Anybody else?
I was just saying, appreciate the work you guys are doing, and I really like how you're talking about the values and how you plan stuff. It's content and the community and the experience in school for the kids, and I know that the kids are excited too. So thank you for all your hard work so far.
Actually, I noticed earlier, Lindsay, you're advertising a Lowell mask there.
Yes, I am a Lowell parent. So.
John, I just wanted to add my thanks in as well to the teachers who presented. It was great to hear from you. I just also want to appreciate the district's emphasis on making sure that across all the district, all of the 5th grade teachers across all 3 schools are working together. I think that's says a lot about the teamwork and the consistency. And I do have a 5th grader and at the Hosmer, and it's just nice to see so much consistency and teamwork amongst the grade levels. So thank you.
Okay, again, thank you very much for all your work and for the presentation. Next item on the agenda would be the phasing of grades to hybrid instruction. So this is a report from the superintendent.
Excellent, thank you. So it's been a long journey to this date, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hold on one second, please. I have a little bit of a presentation that I'd like to share. Not that kind of sharing. Sorry, present, not share. Off my.
Yeah, I think you have to just enunciate a bunch. People are having a little bit of a hard time hearing us. So.
Great. Well, I have no issues enunciating. So as I started to say, it's been a long time to getting to this point in time where we are having a discussion around transitioning from our remote learning model to our bridge to hybrid. As the community and I'm sure all the people that are in the audience are aware, we started working on our bridge to hybrid plan back in May, anticipating that we would be heading back into school, whether it was remotely or in person. We formed a task force. We created a plan. We presented it to the school committee in July. We received a lot of feedback from staff, from parents, from students around what we should be thinking about moving forward in the fall. The school committee did vote a plan back on August the 6th. And at that point in time, we talked about 4 phases of entry. The first being our teachers having basically 10 days of professional development without their students to get ready for the year, to engage in professional learning around the technology that they were going to need to know, to get their classrooms ready, to talk about protocols for when we move to the hybrid. Basically, it was 10 days of serious preparation for what we're going to talk about this evening. The second phase were the 3 days that we did device deployment and supply pickup across all of our buildings, and all of our students were provided with Chromebooks and materials so that they'd be prepared for the remote learning portion of it as we moved forward towards our bridge to hybrid. In that time period, before we moved into phase 3, the state also released information around metrics to consider when thinking about moving to our hybrid model. Watertown for several weeks, I believe now we're up to 8 weeks until this week, we were green, but we decided that it was most important to stick to our plan that we had put forth to the community in terms of phasing in. Phase 3 started on September 22nd. We reopened schools, mostly remotely, but we do have, as we heard today, students that are in some of our substantially separate programs, students that need inclusion services, our ELs, and other students who are unable to access their work online have been in our buildings. That was part of our phased-in approach. And now we are at the point of phase 4, which is determining whether it's time to move into a hybrid model here in Watertown. So I just want to, before I get going, I do want to acknowledge that today out in our panelists, we have our director of, for the health department here in Watertown, Larry Ramden. As you will hear throughout this presentation, pretty much every decision that we make regarding metrics and data and cases and decisions about moving from model to model is done in concert with the Board of Health. And so that's why Larry is here this evening, as he is our partner as we make these decisions moving forward. We're going to talk a little bit about the reopening school strategy and the phased-in approach. We're going to talk a little bit about our current metrics. I want to provide just a few definitions and sample scenarios for people as we head into hybrid. Talk a little bit about safety and mitigation, and then review once again, because it's been several weeks since we've talked about the hybrid schedules, what a hybrid schedule would look like for families. So you see that?
No, I think this is her introduction.
Yeah,
was
I was-
on the open.
sorry. Ooh, distracted by the chat. So I just want to, again, frame this in the fact that we had a very careful and disciplined approach, which enabled us to gradually begin reopening, adhering to strong compliance with health and safety precautions in consult with the town, using that multi-phased approach. I think if we said one thing about Watertown is that we've been very metered and measured. It hasn't been something that we entered into lightly in terms of starting remote. We were very cautious, and I think that throughout the weeks, we have got ourselves into a great position for considering moving to hybrid. We know that we're in a global pandemic, and it has a tremendous impact on how we deliver instruction, and our teachers and support staff are second to none in acting this endeavor, which we just heard from our teachers at the Lowell. And we also recognize that the circumstances of every family and staff member are different, and that no plan, no matter what one we put forward, ultimately will work for everyone in our community. However, we listen often, all the time, and adapt, and we will continue to provide the best learning experience possible given our current context. Throughout this plan, there is tight alignment between our bridge to hybrid and our virtual school plan, so that all of our students are receiving the same level of education, whether they're going to be virtual or hybrid. And as we just heard too, we're also doing it across our grade levels and buildings. So if there's one thing I can say about what we're doing, it's very coherent and very consistent. So we're going to just talk a little bit about where we're at now. So as of today, or coming up on Thursday, I apologize. On Thursday, when we first put our plan together, we said that we were going to do a check-in and see if we're ready to move into hybrid and if we're ready to roll. So by October 22nd, that's this Thursday, we would have that first assessment for possible elementary. And this evening, I'd like to have a discussion around whether we might want to move up middle school as well to return. So, available data and reopening metrics are reviewed to determine if it is safe and feasible to return to in-person learning in a hybrid model in our elementary schools or our primary grades. And then if that's so, what we're going to do is make the move to hybrid on the 27th for elementary and potentially Tuesday, November 10th for middle school. And then by November 23rd, which is the second benchmark, we would be looking at high school return or the second assessment if we need to for our elementaries. So that is the process that we're in right now. I did want to mention before we dive a little bit deeper into the metrics that even, I think there's a lot of concern about remote and whether people were going to attend or be part of it. We have held our attendance rates pretty much at the same level that we would have if we were in person. So we're very excited about the fact that we're able to reach our students and having them there attending our school. So let's talk a little bit about Watertown. So the current metrics for Watertown, we have been green, otherwise known as an average of less than 4 cases per 100,000 since September, and only crossed that line into yellow this past Wednesday for the first time with an average of 4.5 per 100,000 people. Additionally, surrounding communities will vary. Cambridge and Belmont and Newton remain green, and Waltham and Boston are red. I would like to comment on the fact that most of our surrounding communities have brought in their elementary students already. And Boston is making that decision about moving forward, although they are red. Waltham does have their kindergarten and grade 1 students in, knowing that elementary is a really important time, and if we were to focus on any group bringing them back, it would be elementary. DESE is required, I just want to add this too, that DESE is requiring schools to collect COVID data from schools, and at this time, there have been no reported transmissions in schools. We do have cases, absolutely. I think this last week, there were 92 students in the Commonwealth that tested positive for COVID. I think it was 63 staff members, don't quote me, that might not be right. But we are not seeing transmission from student to student, student to staff, or staff to staff. Our positivity rate in Watertown continues to be less than 1%. This is actually important because we have no particular group in our community other than our teachers that are repeatedly tested. Oftentimes we view that positivity rate in other communities based on the fact that they have colleges, if they have prisons, if they have a large amount of nursing homes, because that positivity rate might fluctuate based on having those communities, or conversely, if you have a place such as a community that has a college, those students are tested every 3 days and drive down your positivity rates. So when we think about Watertown, we don't fluctuate as much as many of the communities. So those two metrics are very important, whether we're in green, yellow, or red, and also our positivity rates. So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Department of Public Health are very clear that districts should consider 3 weeks of data prior to making any changes. So right now we have 1 week that was green, or 1 week that is yellow, and then come Wednesday we'll have a 3rd week of data to consider. School districts that are designated as yellow, this is very important, may either be hybrid or remote if there are extenuating circumstances within your community. And for example, there might be community transmission. We are not seeing community transmission yet in Watertown, so we do not necessarily have extenuating circumstances that would say that we should be remote if we're yellow. So this is just a graph that kind of shows the progression in terms of the average cases. But once again, this is over the course of 14 days, and it's per 100,000 people. Watertown has a much smaller population than that. So when it says, 4 or 4.5, if you reduce that down to 40,000, it's really 1 or 2 people within Watertown that would represent that figure. And then you see our positivity rate has stayed pretty flat throughout the duration. And then I just wanted to review once again DESE's recommendations for models based on the average case metric. And also DESE this week is going to be providing additional guidance for districts around red, yellow, green, and unshaded. And primarily, as I just mentioned, they want districts to consider if you are in a red or yellow, are there mitigating factors such as prisons, colleges, or nursing homes that might be impacting that. And that's why we have such a great partnership with our Board of Health, with Larry Ramden, to examine what are our cases. Are they related to our students, or are they related to a particular population, like in a nursing home, or was it somebody who went to a party? That all plays a very important factor in terms of making decisions. So I'm just going to shift a little bit and talk about some definitions, because I know out there in the community there's some questions around who's a close contact and who's not. So technically, a close contact is somebody who is within 6 feet of a symptomatic person who has tested positive for COVID within 72 hours of the onset of symptoms, or 48 hours for an asymptomatic person who has tested positive for COVID. So to be a close contact, you have to be within 6 feet. So ideally in our schools, we've set as a baseline that we have to have 6 feet apart. So oftentimes, even in our schools, we won't have truly close contacts. But that is something that's the definition if you are within 6 feet, and you have to go back. And that's why contact tracing is so important. And if you're tested asymptomatically, then you have to go back 48 hours to find out who might have been within 6 feet for 15 minutes of duration. That's important too. And then there's been a lot of questions about, well, what about the brother of, or what if, let's just use the brother of. If there's a student who has tested positive, their brother is in a different grade, does that mean that grade level are close contacts? No. A close contact is only somebody who's in 6 feet distance of somebody who has COVID. So you might be a contact, of a close contact, but that does not mean that you have to quarantine or that you're out of school. So it's like 6 degrees of separation, but the most important one that triggers whether you quarantine or not is if you're within 6 feet of somebody who has COVID, not somebody's brother, not somebody's aunt, but actually somebody who has COVID. So quarantining, and this is another one, I think there was some confusion out there. If you are a close contact, meaning you've been within 6 feet of somebody for more than 15 minutes who has COVID, you have to quarantine for 14 days. Even if you get a negative test, you have to stay out the whole 14 days because COVID can take 2 to 14 days to actually become a virus within your system. So that's important to know. A lot of people, I think, believe that if you get a negative test, you can come back to school. That is not the case. If you have COVID, you could come back within 10 days if you have a negative test and you're asymptomatic, or 3 days without a fever. So I know it's very complicated, but we're very clear about knowing when we have to pull it, like let people know if they've been in close contact. So in terms of communication, I know this is another question that's been out there. Anyone who's determined to be a close contact, again, less than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, with a symptomatic individual who has tested COVID, positive for COVID, we will call you. We're not going to just send an email and think that you might have gotten it. We will reach out very clearly and call you, and also send you a letter to your family or to you personally if you've been a close contact. We are sticking to, although there has been a change from the Department of Public Health and DESE around elementary schools. Before it was all students in an elementary school classroom were considered close contacts. Now they said only people within 6 feet. We're going to stick to the all elementary students in a classroom. Sometimes it's harder to ensure that you haven't spent more than 15 minutes given the elementary classroom setup. But beyond that, secondary students, it would be students who are really truly close contacts that would be contacted and have to quarantine. So we would do the same thing for secondary students. We would call you to let you know you've been in close contact, and then follow that up with an email. And then if you were in a school where there was a COVID-19 case, then we would inform the community of that school that there was a COVID-19 case. And we will make it very clear that if you haven't been called or contacted, that you are not a close contact. And I know there'll be a lot of questions, but we have to remember that no matter what, we cannot share confidential health information with families or even staff. So that's really important because I know people always want to know who was the person who had COVID, but we can't tell you that. So as long as you haven't been contacted, then you know that you were not a close contact. Hopefully everybody can hear me. So and I'm not going to review these out loud, but just remember that, you know, if we move into a hybrid model, or if you're in school now, it's important to stay home if you have any of the COVID symptoms. And notice that there are a few that are in combination with other symptoms. And there are a few that also indicate you might have a chronic condition. That means that it's not a symptom of COVID. For example, if you have asthma or if you have allergies that cause you to have a chronic cough, that would not be something that would trigger a test or to have to stay home for those symptoms. But that's something that you would want to work out with your doctor and with the school nurse if that's the case. But if not, these are the symptoms that every morning, every parent has to review with their child, and every staff member has to review before they come to school to make sure that they don't have the symptoms. And if they do, then they need to make sure we know that they're at home because they have symptoms and they need to be tested. So one thing I wanted to highlight, and we'll add this to the addendum of the handbook about COVID-19, is that you should contact us, and I might ask Larry to chime in if he wants to add anything, but please make sure if your child has a positive COVID test, you want to call us. You know, I know that the Board of Health will be notified, but at various levels of testing, you know, it might take a little longer for them to be notified. So you need to make sure that you inform us, and you can call the Board of Health as well. The Board of Health will get notified, but the minute you have that test result, please call the schools. Then we can make sure that we move forward and we enact all of our protocols so that we don't have any transmission within the schools. So that's really important as well. I'm just going to review our mitigation strategies here in Watertown. I've done this at every school committee meeting, but I know that as we get closer and closer to the actual switch to hybrid, I think people want to hear again. We have mandatory requirements for all staff and students to wear masks. We know that there was questions around K-1, but we have said pre-K through 12 and all of our staff members that you have to wear a mask when you're in the building. We will have mask breaks that we ensure that there's more than 6 feet of distance between the people, but that is the only time that there would be an exception to having a mask on. Other than that, masks are on all day long for students and staff. The 6 feet of distance is one of our mitigation strategies throughout, and also through cohorting students. We are able to distance 6 feet because we cohort the kids. You know, due to the fact that we've been able to make our cohort small is why we can get 6 feet of distance. It is really important to consider that, because we can't get any bigger than we are right now, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 students, depending upon how many kids are in a class, without going over that 6 foot distance. So we want to make sure that we maintain that, because masks and 6 feet of distance are 2 of the best mitigation strategies that there are out there, proven over and over again. So we want to make sure that we are always having our masks on and that we're always maintaining the 6 feet of distance. And that really is about that 15 minutes. If you incidentally, you know, are walking in the hallway, or if you are going over to pick up a pencil or whatever it might be, that's all right. But it's staying and maintaining less than 6 feet of distance for more than 15 minutes is what we definitely do not want to do. So we are really good about additional PPE for staff who are direct service providers. We do have staff that are a little bit more intensive, working with students with intensive needs. Gowns, gloves, goggles, shields, N95 masks. We are prepared for all of those situations. We have implemented here in Watertown, we are one of the very few districts that are offering COVID testing for our staff. At this point in time, we've had 3 rounds. We've had fully negative results all the way through. In the last test, we had 164 of our staff members taking the test. And as I pointed out, that 164 represents about 1/3 of our staff for our students that are already in our buildings working with our kids. So we did a ventilation study with an outside consultant. We have increased our ventilation within our classrooms by purchasing air purifiers. Now, this was done to, for the most part, augment our existing univent systems that are already in place. And I just want to review this because I know there's a lot of questions around this. You know, air changes per hour is what ACH stands for. So what we did is we assessed our univent systems to determine if they're functioning. And when they're functioning properly, then you can assume that there are certain levels of air exchanges that are happening. That was the purpose of the assessment. Every room was examined, every system was looked at, and we determined that the majority of our HVAC systems, our univents, are fully functioning, which would, in the estimation of the person that did this study, would be a 2.35 air exchanges per hour. If it's in a lower end, meaning the ones that weren't functioning quite as well, it might be 1. And those are the areas that we absolutely 100% are fortifying with air purifiers. The air purifiers that we have, based upon the size of a room, also have 3 to 5 air changes per hour. And then if you have your window open, even just 1/4 of an inch, that's another air exchange per hour. So it's, you know, ideally you would have 4 changes per hour. I think if you look at what we've got here, that is well above and beyond the 4 changes per hour. We're actually up to probably 6 changes per hour in our classrooms. So we're very proud of the layers of air purification and ventilation that we have within our buildings. One thing we're also committed to, I know that this is something that people have asked about, is specials being remote. We are, except for at the high school, and we'll work around how we do PE at the high school, and we're certainly not singing and playing instruments there as well, but we will make accommodations. But in elementary and middle, all of our specials are done remotely. That is to make sure that A, we don't have staff that are in 30 different rooms over the course of a week, and B, both PE and music are not, they're not advised to be done indoors when you're actually singing or playing PE, which with our elementary school and our middle school students would be a big challenge to make sure that we weren't getting within those 6 feet. So the last thing I want to say on this slide is, no matter what we're doing, we can only guarantee what we do within our buildings. So I'm going to put that typical plug in that when you're not in school, we encourage our families to continue to practice the social distancing and the mask wearing that are going to be essential no matter what. I think we've seen with the current increases in COVID cases that a lot of that has to do with familiarity, people coming together in family groups and thinking that just because you're a family member, you probably don't have COVID, but you can't ever take that chance. Even, no matter what, when you're in a social situation, please wear your masks and keep your social distance. If you don't have your mask on, at least keep yourself, at least 6 feet away from a person that you're with. So that's just important, especially as we head indoors a little bit more, and Halloween is coming as well. So try to avoid, I know it's a beautiful whatever for Halloween, but this is not the year to be coming together indoors and having a party around Halloween. Just my suggestion. Principal Phelan had talked about this. This is actually a little bit of a slide that we have from our last presentation, but our principals have reviewed our protocols and procedures at our faculty meetings and with their instructional leadership teams. And this is in addition to the time that was spent in the first 13 days preparing for school. So we have gone over with our staff our safety protocols. And obviously throughout this week, we will be considering what it is that we need to do best to keep our staff safe and to keep our students safe as well. So, main topics, obviously, entering and exiting the buildings, classroom procedures for when you're inside your classroom, our recess and mask breaks, transportation and drop-offs, and then addressing symptomatic students and staff. So those are the considerations that we, have already worked through, but we continue to work through as we head to hybrid. So I'm going to stop talking for a few seconds and ask our principals if they could review the schedules. Who's going to start with that one? Don't all speak at once.
I'm happy to go first. I just didn't know if you wanted to go in order.
You want to go in order with the? You want to go to mine because mine's the least exciting?
Sure, Joel. Let's start with Joel.
Sure. So Watertown High School, we originally put out a hybrid schedule that looked very similar to our current hybrid schedule. Of course, my dog is chewing on a toy. Why doesn't someone else go? And I'm going to take that away from her.
Okay.
I can do elementary duty.
Okay, I will click on the bridge to hybrid.
So as many of you know, because you are living it currently, students are at the elementary level are fully remote on Mondays, and then on their core day, they are attending online classes with their classroom teachers from 8:15 to 12:15. And on their extension days, they are doing specials and other independent work. Dee Dee, there's another tab on that, on this document, if you don't mind clicking on it. Once we flip to a hybrid mode, their core day schedules, their schedule stays the same. The difference would be that on core days, kids would be coming into the building. Their extension days would be the same. They would just be at home. So we were very intentional about designing a schedule that would allow for us to fluidly move from one model to the other, should that indeed need to happen. And as you know, most of the work after 12:15 is by and large, asynchronous work. We are increasingly scheduling that time to provide special education services, reading and math tutoring. So you'll see that time continue to grow in terms of its usage.
Donna?
Okay. Thank you. All right, so this is the hybrid. So this is just a sample grade 7 hybrid schedule. It looks very familiar. For everyone who's at the middle school now knows that we have recently, actually starting tomorrow, updated our schedule to move from 30-minute classes and an hour-long cluster time to the schedule that you see in front of you. So again, this is a sample grade 7 schedule where regardless of what cohort you're in, everybody's meeting for 20 minutes every morning, a community meeting, which has been working out very well. And then they'll on the column on the left is their hybrid in day. So they'll be starting, and this is the order they go in, not necessarily English first, but they all go English. Well, actually, I take that back. That's not the order they go. They go English, math, science, history, all in that order. So I'll have to rearrange that. 7th grade has a break there. 6th grade's break is a little bit earlier. 8th grade's break is a little bit later so that when we're in the building, they won't all be taking a break at the same time. We'll have an organized fashion to sort of when they can take their mask breaks. All the classes are 45 minutes long, and then they'll have 15 minutes at the end where they can have a quick DEAR time if they want, a quick organization support time. And then in the afternoon, they do have any asynchronous work they have to do. They can work on their drop everything and read. Our expectation is they're reading for at least an hour a week in their independent reading book. There are special education classes. There are office hours in the afternoon. We have a lot of performance music classes, which is great to be able to fit that in so that everyone has that opportunity. There's enrichment classes such as Kingian and leadership and yearbook in the afternoon on both days. And then the column on the right is the hybrid out. So that's there. There's some additional special education support. Everybody has a world language or reading or a specialist class, one period, and then the other one, the other period. So there's lots of opportunities sort of for the asynchronous work as well as the specialist classes, which, as Dr. Galton said, will always be remote throughout the whole school year. And this has been working out well. We have about 85 students in our building right now, with a lot of special education teachers, again, from 2 to 5 days. I so appreciate the work they've been doing, and it is very nice to see kids in the building smiling and just really, getting acclimated to being there. So that's been working out really well.
Thank you, John. Joel?
Back to the high school. Thank you for your patience. So transparently, we are going to be looking at switching our hybrid schedule. Right now, it looks very similar to our remote schedule. But unfortunately, as we look and collect data around the office hours and students' usage of those office hours, we are going to be looking at perhaps filling those times with more structured classes. So extending our blocks, but still being sensitive to the fact that we have to be mindful of students being on screen that much time. So Fridays we'll still have, we're looking at still getting advisory and guidance seminars, because our students have been so thankful for that time with their guidance counselors, as well as time and advisory to get important messaging out about things like COVID safety. I see a comment in the chat about kids from the high school playing basketball without masks. So we did do a session about how to be safe in the community. So that time has really been appreciated, but I'm just going to be very transparent in saying that we're collecting data, looking at it, and the team is working on coming up with a schedule that makes sense for our students and our families and our teachers in the coming week.
Excellent. Thank you. And I would be remiss in not mentioning that we have our coordinator of our director of our early childhood program. And one of the reasons that we don't have a necessary schedule up here is because the preschool has been in session. We do have one pre-K class. I don't know, Karen, if you wanted to speak a little bit about your thought about moving into hybrid for that, but.
Sure. Sorry about that. So the pre-K class is actually due to the number of the size of the class that we have. All of our students would be able to come in person because there are 11 students in that class. And so with looking at the space that we have and the number of staff that are also assigned to that room, having the 11 students come in person would be the most beneficial to keep consistency with the kids and to maintain the routine that they have already been having while they've been doing the remote learning.
Thank you. And I just want to, again, I know that Dawn, I think, already gave a shout out to the staff that are in, but I wanted to just mention being in the Phillips with the early childhood program. They've been in since the 22nd, I believe.
Yes.
Right after that. So they're almost heading into their first month, and it's quite joyous to see the little ones in our building and doing so well. And I think that, and remember that our early childhood, our preschool program is considered our a high needs group, as they are really, it's an integrated preschool, so that's why they started right off the bat, and they're doing just so well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And I wanted to mention, I think we got through the schedules.
Didi, like Kendra had a question.
Yeah, sorry, John, can I ask a quick question and just a quick comment? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify for families and just make sure it's clear. For elementary and middle school then, in terms of the hybrid schedule, for cohort A, kids would be in the building Tuesday and Thursday. For cohort B, kids would be in the building Wednesday and Friday. So I just want to make sure that's really clear.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. And then pre-K, you're saying Tuesday through Friday? All kids, all the pre-K would be in. Is that accurate? Or is it Monday through Friday?
It would be Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday. Wonderful. And then finally, huge thank you to Mr. Giacobazzi about switching the high school schedule. I think that's really important, and I really appreciate you making whatever changes you're going to make. I appreciate that.
Sure. And just to be clear, we're still looking at students in the building on a cohort basis, Monday through Thursday, and fully remote on Friday, but increasing our synchronous time on Friday is our best working model right now. So thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent. And so what I was about ready to say is that, as we just heard from Principal Giacobazzi, is that our schedules are being evaluated to ensure that time on learning expectations are met. We know that we are under some scrutiny from the department, and we have been considering ways to ensure that we are meeting our time on learning requirements. We're very confident that we are headed in that right direction, but you will see some changes just to ensure that full day of learning, and not just, we are providing a full day of learning right now, but it's the check-ins and making sure that the students are on track that we're going to start building in as the weeks progress for the days that they're not in school. And then, as I've already said it, and I'll say it again, we have 330 of our students already in person, and 160 plus of our staff are in person. It's been very successful. And somebody had put in the chat about the staggered starts. We at the middle of the summer, we had put that out there that we were thinking about staggering the starts just to bring in different groups of kids. But at this point in time, especially here at the Lowell, at the middle school, where we're almost up to 80 students in the building, we have found that the entry and exits are going very, very well. And based on the plans that the principals have put together about entering in different rooms and different sides, we don't think that there's going to be a need to have any staggered starts. If that turns out to not be the case, then we can certainly reevaluate that, but we're going to start without having a staggered start. And I would also like to say that, and if Ms. Perkins wants to add as well, we are ready to send out information about busing as soon as we have made that decision to move to hybrid. Our buses are set, our routes have been established, and we'll have passes and information out later on this week to those families that will be taking the bus. So that is something else. And same thing with the cohorts, you get bused twice a week to school. Anyone taking the bus, we'll go over protocols once you get that information, but it's the same thing, masks on all the time. You have to sit in your assigned seat, you cannot move, very important, but we're gonna go ahead and get rolling on our buses as well.
Dee, I have a quick question, if that's okay, John.
Yeah, I'm done, so I'm gonna stop sharing. So that I
just had a quick question about like the staggered start idea, less about the actual staggered coming in, but there was a question in the chat, and I think that that's really important, which is, students are not going to necessarily be ready to start right when they get in. They're going to put their stuff away, they're going to be setting up their desks, and right now, morning meeting is with the remote students and the students who are in person. And I'm just curious if we're going to maybe push that back a few minutes in terms of starting that morning meeting for the remote students, so that the students who are in person might have a little bit more time to get settled and the teachers ready for their day. Because I'm not sure how they're going to have all those kids ready to go at 8:15 and be bringing in the kids remotely. So are we doing any adjustment on that?
One of the ideas, Lily, we had for the Lowell School was that Candace and myself are going to continue to do the morning announcements for the kiddos that are both in the school and that are on their virtual day or their remote day. So we're going to actually open the doors at 8 o'clock in the morning so we can start to bring kids in, and some kids will actually participate in our announcement before they even start with the morning announcement, just to give an for the teachers to have an opportunity to have the kids entertained as they're entering their classrooms early, because they won't, in the past they used to sit in the wait outside in the hallways, where they'll be going right into their tables, and they're going to put their our morning announcements on the smart board. So that's just going to give us a little bit of time, and then we're going to see maybe 8:20 is when we're going to go off with our morning meeting, but everybody will be like getting something, so they're not going to be waiting.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Dr. Galton, you have more of that?
I think that's it, and I'm sure that there'll be questions, but I just wanted to just give an overview as to where we're at.
So at this point, I'm going to ask the other school committee members if they have questions. Trying to speak up. I'll speak up. At this point, I'm going to ask other school committee members if they have any questions on the presentation, like Kendra and Lily asked, and then save comments in terms of kind of what actions we want to take. Let's save that until later, if that's okay. And then we'll ask questions, if you have any questions of the specific questions, and then we'll open it up to the forum, and then we'll come back and have a discussion, okay? So any other school committee members have particular questions related to the presentation? Anyone else?
I have more.
Lily, go ahead.
So I think one of the other questions that I have is, at this point, we did tell parents in August that if they were not feeling safe sitting their students in, they could potentially switch to virtual. And I was wondering how that was going to look, especially at WMS. What is virtual going to look like? And also how are we allowing parents to pivot? If Watertown, and it does look like we're going hybrid next week, if parents are now saying, well, we're in the yellow, or perhaps even if we went to the red, if we still continued to move forward with hybrid, if parents did not feel comfortable sending their students in, how do they make that switch? And is that really available to all?
I don't know if you want me to go first. I would say that it looks different at WMS in the elementary schools, so I'm not speaking for the elementary schools at all. Right now we have our sections and our cohorts do have somewhat of a mix of parents who have chosen hybrid and parents who have chosen remote. So there weren't enough students, there was less than 7% of students who chose remote, so there weren't enough students to make only remote sections. If parents do opt for remote, I could relook at that and see if there were some sections that would be just remote, but that was impossible to do given the very low numbers going into the school year. So it will be sort of what you've heard in a lot of different schools where when the, say, cohort A is in on a Tuesday, and if there's a couple of kids who are home remote, then they'll be Zooming into the class. So it will take a little bit of practice. My brother's a principal in North Carolina. You've all probably heard me say. He's been doing this for weeks, and he said it's not easy, but the teachers are used to it, and they've worked out a system that works out well for all. So just like everything else that we've been doing since March, it will probably take a little bit of getting used to, but we'll prepare for it as it gets closer and make sure that, we can make it the best for everybody.
So Donna, you're saying it's going to be like simulcasting? So teachers will be teaching remote students at the same time as they're teaching the in-person students? Okay.
Yes.
And Ms. Reed, at the high school, we're looking at doing the same thing. Just as recently as last Wednesday, professional development, my awesome teachers came up with a plan that they presented to each other about how to make that a little easier using their projectors. So they project them up on the screen almost as though they're live in the class. And then we're going to be looking at cameras so that they can see all their friends. It's not ideal by any means, but it's the fastest way we can move through the curriculum where kids don't miss a whole day if we're talking just the hybrid model. And for those that are choosing to be fully remote, it's the best way for them to stay within the class that they're currently in. They stay on the roster. They don't have to shuffle to teachers that are different. And they certainly don't have to lose pace with the curriculum. So while it's not ideal, none of it is. And we feel like that's the best option right now. We'll try to make it work technologically as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Dee Dee, if you could just answer the question about, if parents do want to make that switch, how do they do that? We're already seeing comments in the chat right now that some parents are concerned. So could we just get maybe some clarity that, if the decision is made, on Thursday to go hybrid and parents go, I'm just not there yet for whatever reason. How do they make that decision and make that change for their child?
And I think it's a two-way street because there might be parents who are remote that want to come back to in-person learning. So, I think that I'm not going to say either one of those is easy because obviously we created our classrooms based upon what parents had indicated to us in the beginning. But I think it would be pretty imperative to reach out to our principals and, discuss what sort of options there might be. Please note that if people were to move, that they would be moving out of potentially a classroom that they have currently, because that's the only way that we'd be able to do that. And if it was a large number of people and we had to switch a cohort, then once again, same thing, we're gonna have to end up moving some classes around. But I think the most important thing at this point is anyone who has that concern at any of the levels at this point in time, but obviously most immediate for elementary, is that they reach out to the principals. So I think that's the best answer at this moment. It's actually probably harder for us to move a student from remote into in-person. And, we might not be able to do that within, might take several weeks to be able to figure out the best way to do that. But that is something that is something that would be worked out through your principals at this point in time.
Are there other questions?
I just had one other question, John, and that was just if I know that we're still waiting on some air purifiers to arrive. My question is, are all the classrooms at WMS ready to go? Or I believe that we're waiting for some of the air purifiers at WMS. Do we have enough rooms with the good ventilation metrics that if those air purifiers do not come in, we'll still be ready to run if the date is moved? Or what would we be doing?
So we are going to obviously hold and wait for our air purifiers. That's very important. We did hear Lori Cable reached out to the company. We are very optimistic that they'll be able to release the shipment this Friday, which means that we should have them by the end of the week next week. So right now, it appears that we should be set for that. But if that gets delayed or something happens and we're not able to provide air purification, especially in the rooms that need it, then we would have to reconsider when we would start middle school. But we're very optimistic that they will be in. But we're good all across all elementaries, so. And the Phillips, because we have one in our office.
Okay, any other questions? All right, let me then open it up to the public, if someone would like.
John, can I just ask one thing?
Sure.
Superintendent, thank you for the presentation. It doesn't really give a conclusion in terms of a definitive, we want parents to be able to plan here. I can assume based on the presentation that on Thursday, when you look at the Wednesday metrics and make a final decision, that we're going to move to hybrid on the 27th. But I do think it's really important if it's really looking that way, I want to be able to foreshadow that to parents and families so that they can start to plan. So, based on what you know now, does that look like that's the direction we're going?
Unless something were to drastically change, based upon all the mitigation strategies that we have in place, based upon all the preparations that we've made to date, then I think that we would be looking pretty optimistically of moving into hybrid on October 27th. But as I've always said all along, you can't predict what's going to happen in a couple of days. But if we need to make a change, we will. But that is what we're hoping for at this point in time.
Right, and then the other piece is the switch from the middle school date from November 30th to November 10th. And we can talk as a committee about how we want to handle that, but that's also, it's 3 weeks away, something that we should be clear with families that, if this is a change that we're moving forward with, then I do want to make sure we let people know as soon as possible so that that families and staff can all plan.
So, just going back to your previous question, I know we have Larry here, Larry Ramden from our Board of Health, and I just want to invite him either if he wants to say anything, or I would just highlight again that the decisions around, whether we move. So I will be talking to Larry on Wednesday very seriously about, what is it looking like in Watertown? Do we feel that, the metrics show that we're able to move into hybrid? He has obviously a lot of information from DPH and all of our local information. So it's a key that we're in constant communication with Larry Ramden around this. And I just want to make sure that everybody's on board with that. Larry, do you want to say anything by any chance?
Thank you, Superintendent Golson. Just want to show everyone that from the time COVID-19 happened, we have been in constant contact with school administration. We have worked through all the plans. I just saw that someone had a question and about close contact, etc., and contact tracing. There is contact tracing that will be done. It is being handled through my department. We will be getting assistance on identifying information from the school department, but all the contact tracing will be handled by us per state mandate. I also want to reiterate Superintendent Goldston's advice on who is a contact. Secondary contacts are not required to quarantine. So if you know someone who is a case, but you have not been in contact with that person, so your child is in school, and that is probably a really challenging, in fact, it is the right one. So your child is in school, your child is considered a contact of someone who is positive and has to isolate. You're not a contact because you're second step. So you're 2 steps away from that contact. However, if your child becomes positive, then you will have to personally quarantine. So I just want people to understand that because your child or you're teaching in an environment where you may be in contact with someone, no one else in your home is considered a contact because they've been in contact with you, because you're not a case yet. If you become a case, then we will address that. We have up-to-date information on the cases. Unfortunately, for some of the cases that are out there, we are not getting timely information. What I also want to recommend, we are not looking at any other test except PCR test as a confirmatory positive. Everything else is probable. There's some places where you can go and you can get a test and it takes just a couple hours or a day to get back your test. It is most likely not a PCR test you're doing. So if you are getting one of those tests, then what should be done within a 24-hour period, if you test positive or the child tests positive, then you should be getting a test done, a PCR test done. I know Dr. Galston and the team at the Watertown School Department has made arrangements for testing for individuals, and we have a really good plan in place. We have already had a couple of concerns that we've addressed. It is interesting that when people are at home on weekends, nothing stops in the background. We all have our electronic leashes that we have to carry with us 24 hours a day, and when it rings, we must answer because we don't know what is happening on the other end. So I believe while nothing is perfect, that we do have a good command of the situation. Additionally, we cannot overemphasize the need to wear face coverings, the need to socially distance, and the need to wash your hands adequately. It is coming up to the holidays, and where there are a lot of family gatherings and parties. Yes, this is probably not the year you want to have a Halloween party or consider having huge family gatherings at the holidays. What you may want to consider, like many people have done in past, is do it electronically. Have a virtual gathering. So you and your immediate families are going to be together. You can see the rest of your families and still socialize that way. We are in very unusual circumstances. We're still going through the first phase, and I am worried as to what is going to happen within the next few months. As you can see, we have moved from green to yellow, and it's a bit concerning now. So, but we have 3 weeks to see where this takes us. So that is all I have to add.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Any other questions? I do want to emphasize, as Kendra mentioned, Kendra Foley mentioned, that we do the plan does have a schedule that we're looking at, that we're continuing to look at. Assessment on the 22nd, the elementary starting hybrid on the 27th, and then middle school and high school after that. Any other comments or questions from the school committee? Dr. Dawson, anything else? Okay, let me open it up to the public then. And I moved the public forum until after the presentation, with the hope that her comments will answer some of the questions that you might have had. The superintendent's presentation might have answered some of the questions that you would have. I know we'll have a number of people that want to speak, so I would ask everybody to keep within 3 minutes and recognize that this is an opportunity to speak. This is it's not a question and answer forum. We won't have time to do that in this context. I will say though, just if you're listening to the presentations, it's pretty clear, like particularly on curriculum and scheduling things at the individual schools, they're continuing to adapt and modify and to make the programming better. And so I think those kinds of questions are best dealt with at the school level anyway. But anyway, this is an opportunity to make a statement, a concern, whatever you want to say, but again, not really a Q&A session. That's not the intent here. So first person I have is Kara Concession. And please, I can just identify yourself at the beginning.
Oh, do I have to? Sorry. My fault.
Hi. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I won't take long. Good evening, Dr. Galston, members of the school committee. My name is Kara Concession. I've been teaching in Watertown for almost 20 years at the middle school level. I'm a parent of a second grader at the Hosmer School. And I'm asking that you revisit the recommendation to push up the proposed start date of the middle school. When I'm making decisions as an educator, the question I always come back to is, what is best for kids? I'm struggling to understand how this earlier proposed start would be more pedagogically sound than continuing with the current plan. As I understand it, at the middle school, students will be live streaming into classes. Tomorrow at the middle school, we begin a different schedule that will allow for 45 minutes of direct instruction for core subject area class, instead of the 30 minutes we had for the first 4 weeks of school. We're excited about this change as it will give us more face-to-face time with students as those 30-minute blocks flew by for us. As an educator and a parent, I've been overwhelmingly pleased at the difference in engagement level and instructional practices from the spring to where we are now. We've all learned so much, and we continue to learn how to navigate this new world. And we continue to reevaluate what is best for kids and making adjustments accordingly. The schedule right now, I feel, is robust and rigorous. The kids are coming, they're participating, they're raising their hand. We are making those strong connections with kids that are so necessary over Zoom. We have been able to do that. There's no good answers right now. We know that. We want to get back to school. But right now, there is no standalone remote school at the middle school level, nor are there clustered teachers who are dedicated remote-only teachers. Therefore, instruction at the middle school level, as I understand it, will look no different than it does right now. With students zooming into classes, the classroom teacher will be managing the students directly in front of them, as well as the students who are joining from home. Thus, teaching will remain the same, with lessons still being delivered via Zoom, so that all students are able to participate. Students will not be interacting with one another any differently than they are now. Group work has been meaningful using breakout rooms on Zoom, and that model will be what needs to continue when we are in person, as restrictions do not allow the kids to work together in groups. I'd like to ask that parents be resurveyed before a final decision is made on the start date, given the fact that many parents who likely felt more comfortable sending their children back in August might not feel safe doing so now that cases in Watertown and in the state and the country continue to rise. I would also ask as a school that should the numbers show an increased percentage of students who will remain fully remote, that we act accordingly and establish an educationally sound program for those students with dedicated teachers instead of live streaming into classrooms, as we know that is not best practice. To do this thoughtfully, the school will need time to prepare, and November 10th start date does not give us that necessary time. I would also ask that you seriously consider the real educational reasoning behind having kids in person right, in the next couple of weeks. I bring myself back to that question of what is best for kids. I don't think it's best for kids. They will be following the same schedule, having the same learning experience, whether they're in person or remote, adding in the obvious need for masks and PPE and the logistics of being able to hear one another, juggle both remote and in-person children. It'll probably be more difficult. So I just ask that you think about whether the benefits of this outweigh the risks. I don't think so. So thank you for hearing me.
All right, thank you. Kevin?
Hi, you guys can hear me, right? All right.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I'm Kevin Spritzer, third grade teacher at the Lowell School. Thanks for having me on. So I just want to give you guys a little perspective about my experience this afternoon. Dr. Galdston earlier in this presentation mentioned that hybrid protocols were covered during opening PD days. And I want to just give you guys a little perspective on that. So they definitely were discussed, but there was only briefly. They were not addressed at length, and that's understandable because preparing for a comprehensive remote program is extremely time-sensitive, intensive, and complicated. This afternoon, after reading the superintendent's recommendation to the school committee, in a brief chat, my third grade team brainstormed a long list of questions we have about protocols and expectations for teachers and students should we return to hybrid. Just a few examples of those questions that I have. What do we do if a student forgets their water bottle at home? The water fountains are turned off and there are only water filling stations, for example. What do we do? Does 6 feet really mean 6 feet? There are students in school, and nobody seems to have gotten COVID who's in school. But if you really look closely, 6 feet's not really happening consistently with the students who are in school. How does eating in the classroom work? For example, the third grade snack time is at 8:35 in the morning. That's our assigned snack time. That's just after breakfast. I actually have students eating breakfast during snack time, a number of them. Can they eat at all later in the day, or is that the time we're sort of tied to? Are students allowed to touch books from our classroom library? If they do touch the books, do I have to isolate the books for 3 days? What supplies are students expected to bring in from school? Principal Phelan asked us that question the other day, and that's a great question, but it needs to be uniform across the whole school and the whole system. What is expected of students to bring in? Are we allowed to touch students' computers if they're having trouble? If yes, are we expected to sanitize them after? How do mask breaks work? When and where? These were just some questions that we brainstormed, but there's a lot more on that list. Some of these may sound small, but they add up for teachers who are trying to manage their in-person cohorts and implement a rigorous standards-based curriculum. There are many more questions that we came up with beyond this. We are only one team at one school. There are likely dozens of other crucial questions that need to be answered to ensure a safe, consistent implementation of the in-person component of the hybrid program. For example, how would parents and you, school committee, how would you feel knowing that a teacher in one class is sitting down beside students, reading with them one-on-one, and another teacher down the hall won't get within 6 feet of any student? You probably want that to be consistent. To get everyone on the same page, teachers need time to have our questions asked and answered fully. Schools have faculty meetings on the first Wednesday of each month. You consider pushing back. Am I breaking up? Sorry.
You're coming up to 3 minutes, please.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying, I'm almost done. So I'm just saying, I suggest you consider pushing back the elementary start date to at least after our next faculty meetings, which are on Wednesday, November 4th, so that all the faculty can be on the same page. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Barbara?
Oh, sorry.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, Barbara. Go ahead.
Hi. Hi, this is Barbara Barry, fourth grade teacher at Cuniff School, and actually Kevin took the words right out of my mouth. Great minds must think alike. We at the Cuniff also brainstormed lists of questions, and Kevin hit the nail right on the head. Those are the little things that happen in an elementary school day that we really don't have the protocols for. We really, really need guidance in this area. All of us want to be back in school. We really do. This is not easy. I've never worked harder in my life, but I am really worried. And to hear Mr. Ramadan say that he's worried as well makes me concerned. I urge the school committee to slow this down a little bit, and we really need a little more preparation for this. We spent a lot of time preparing for remote learning, but now we're shifting gears and it's not super easy to do. The numbers are going up every day. We see it. We see the numbers climbing, and health experts are saying the next 6 to 12 weeks of this pandemic are probably the most serious ever. Our schools are not totally ready. We haven't thought about all these protocols. We still have some air purifiers that need to be ordered, or they're ordered but they're not in yet. We still have screens that need to be put into windows. We still have some questions about air quality. We we really have a lot to think about. We also have the need for some more actual bodies in the school. I know that we need at my school some more IAs, instructional assistants. And I know that it's hard to get these people because who wants to come into these buildings right now? We also need substitutes in case we get sick. We really have to think about this, and I'm not sure at this time the benefit of going back into school, which, believe me, I would much rather do. It would be 10 times easier to go into school and teach the kids. But I'm not sure at this time if the benefit outweighs the risks. And by the way, and when kids come back, it's going to not be elementary school the way we know it. It's going to be kids sitting at their desk, very limited movement. It's going to be very regimented, snack breaks, and we're going to have to do them outside probably. We haven't really thought about all this. Anyway, I just want to let everybody know that. And anyway, I hope you'll consider it. Thank you for letting me speak.
Right, thank you, Barbara. Next would be Matt.
Sorry, getting there.
Hello, thank you, John. Thank you, Dr. Galston and school committee again for everything that you're trying to do and keeping us safe and keeping our kids safe. I'm just here again to talk about the numbers. I presented some data last time. The 7-day moving average from the day that we started, which was September 22nd, was 443. The 7-day moving average as of yesterday, that means I'm dropping one day, adding one day, is 689.5. I'm sorry, 0.85. Now that's obviously Massachusetts. That's not in just Watertown. But, as we see, we don't live in only Watertown. I'm coming to you from Boston right now, and I ran home after, my day. I'm kind of eating dinner now during this meeting. So I'm in a red zone. As soon as I got home, I got hit with a alert from Everett and Chelsea that there's a severe COVID risk in Everett and Chelsea. So that was fun to come home to. And I'll be back in the building tomorrow. As Barbara said, we still have some severe risk concerns about air protocol and air purifiers. My room was 53 degrees today at the high school. Today is October 19th. The heat was supposed to be on October 15th. I have no heat in my classroom. So I opened the windows, and thankfully it was warm outside. So it actually warmed up by the end of the day. It was almost 60 degrees. So I know the high school is last. I know the projection is November 30th, but these are problems that we have through the district. Dr. Golston stated that we don't have things that inflate our numbers in Watertown. We don't have colleges. We don't have nursing home facilities. Yet, on our own, we've moved to yellow. So we have in Massachusetts very close to an exponential increase right now, and that number is going to continue to go up. And in Watertown, it's easy to say we have an exponential increase because it's 4.5 as compared to 3.2 that we had last year per 100. I'm sorry, last week per 100,000. But my question is, if we don't have these, or I should say my statement, if we don't have these areas that are causing these increases, we don't have these colleges, we don't have these nursing homes, but we're still climbing, what's the flag and what's the metric to where it's not safe to come in? What's the metric, as Mr. Jigabazi said, students are playing basketball without masks. High school students are doing a lot of things without masks. I see them all the time. So where is our metric? Where is the safety net to fall back on if and when these numbers keep up? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Matt. Taylor?
Oh, no. Whoops. Wrong person. Sorry about that.
Hello, are you ready? Hi.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'd like to start by acknowledging all the hard work that the school committee and teachers and staff have done to get us to this point. I myself am a professor at Boston University, and I've been teaching simultaneously in person and on Zoom since early September, and I know firsthand the challenges, frustrations, and technological snafus that remote and hybrid learning can bring. I also know that not every question that faculty posed at my university could be answered before we started the semester, and that having confidence in administrators was essential to our ability to teach safely and effectively. Along with my appreciation, I would like to convey clearly that remote learning is not working nearly as well for my family as in-person learning did. My elementary school children who used to thrive in school are less excited, less engaged, and increasingly rejecting what they are asked to do in a virtual format. Emotional meltdowns over frustrations with school have become common. I fear that they are losing their love of learning, and that the longer the current situation continues, the harder it will be to eventually get back to normal. For this reason, I urge you all to proceed with the hybrid plan and open the elementary school buildings to all students next week as a first step toward eventually returning to full-time in-person learning. Once the school doors are open, it is imperative that the district continue to work toward expanding the in-person learning hours at the elementary school level. The hybrid schedule adopted in August with 2 mornings per week of in-person instruction involves less classroom time than any of the hybrid options presented in the July parent survey. Frankly, I'm skeptical that the educational and emotional challenges my children are facing will be significantly improved if the remainder of the year consists of 3 days on Zoom, independent learning for all science and social studies, and no in-person specials. Now that the district has released initial enrollment figures for the fall, it is clear that getting students back in the classroom 5 days a week for 4 hours each day is actually feasible. In July, when presenting the 3 reopening options, Dr. Goldston stated that in order for the 5-day-a-week in-person plan to be feasible, in-person enrollments would need to be reduced by 25%. Between the families who have left Watertown Public Schools in favor of homeschooling or private school, and those who have chosen the virtual school, we have met or exceeded that threshold at each elementary school. The number of students choosing the bridge to hybrid option this fall is 75% of September 2019 enrollment at the Lowell, 66% at the Hosmer, and 61% at the Cunniff. I recognize that returning to the classroom 5 days a week is not what was originally envisioned in the bridge to hybrid plan, and that additional classroom time. Yeah, so another 30 seconds. Additional classroom time may require additional staff and repurposing non-classroom space. But please consider what is at stake, not only our children's education, but also the financial health of the district, since families with the means to do so will continue to vote with their feet if their needs are not being met. I urge you to think creatively to get our children back in the classroom as soon as possible and as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jean Walters.
Okay,
Jean, can you hear? Are you able to speak?
I've asked her to unmute. Oh, here she goes.
I didn't raise my hand, sorry.
Okay, well, there you go. Next.
Rachel.
Rachel.
Rachel K.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I said something similar before, and
Could you introduce yourself first, please?
okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
just introduce yourself, please.
Okay, sorry. My name is Rachel Kay. I'm the mother of a second grader at the Lowell, and I wanted to respond to the teachers, particularly the elementary school teachers who've asked a lot of really good questions about coming back and a lot of the details. But keep in mind, there have been teachers and students who have been in person. I can speak for the Lowell, certainly a nice group of them, for a month now, and they're dealing with these things. And if these questions are an issue, these teachers probably already have answers that are reasonable and workable and may need to be adjusted when more people come into the school, but they're working. As for the classroom being different, again, I said this before, the kids are adjusting. I've got to imagine it's going to be more painful for the teachers to think about what could have been, whereas the kids are just going with it. And it's just so valuable for my son to be in person, and I wish that the district would do that for other kids because I'm very concerned about the inequity. And now I need to go read a book for bedtime. So I'll.
All right, thank you, Rachel.
Holly.
Holly.
Hi, I'm Holly Kachimwell. I'm a middle school world language teacher, and I'm entering year 40. Yes, you heard that right, 40. I am teaching virtually, which I went into kicking and screaming because technology is not my strong suit. I spent the summer on simple K-12, working very hard to get my technology skills up to par, and I am happy to say that my students are giving me straight DS across the board, straight 10s. They're engaged, they're happy, they're speaking Spanish after 10 classes. I only see them twice a week instead of 5 times a week. It's the safest plan for right now. They're happy, they're learning. I'm sorry that it's not a plan that's working for everybody, but it is the safest plan. If kids need engagement, they can be outside while the weather is good. They can get out and mask and play and distance outside. It's the safest plan for right now, and I ask that you respectfully consider sticking to your plan. Buenas noches.
Thank you, Holly. Deb, Pete.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time and giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm Deb King. I have just retired from teaching in Watertown this past June, and I continue as president of the Watertown Educators Association. I'd like to thank Mr. Ramden for his opinion, his comments, and most especially for his concern about the increase of the COVID cases and what might be coming. That's critically important, and it's critically important to us to hear from someone such as Mr. Ramden, who is a professional in this area. So I appreciate your comments, Mr. Ramden, and I appreciate school committee for allowing him to speak. I want to say, someone mentioned that teachers have the answers. It may have been Rachel. Teachers don't have the answers. Teachers are very concerned. In fact, they have many questions and concerns that still have not been met. As much work as the school administration has done to put things in place, there are still a lot of things that need to be done to make these schools safe. Also, Rachel mentioned that kids are adjusting to virtual learning. I've seen virtual learning go from less than mediocre and with lots and lots of problems, and at this point, it's just, I think as Holly mentioned, it's working. It's almost flawless.
Try not to roll our eyes.
Kids, pardon me? Kids are adjusting, teachers are adjusting. And I just want to, I think finally, well, I have one thing to consider. Things are working now with the higher needs students. I believe that Dee Dee said we have something like 330 students in class. What happens when we double and triple that? I'm not so sure it will be seamless or it will be working as well as it is now. And then finally, I just want to say that we all recognize that in person will not look anything like it looked prior to COVID. Kids are going to be experiencing their teachers in hazmat suits. They're going to have to be masked all day long. They're going to have to not be able to meet with their peers and play with their friends. They can't touch books. They can't touch things in the classroom. They have to stay seated in their seats to keep a 6-foot distance. And as one teacher described the other day, and teachers will be up against their blackboard, moving along side by side like a crab, doing a crab walk. Because if they move anywhere, they'll break the 6-foot distance. I've had many complaints from teachers already that the 6-foot distancing has been broken with the students that we have in class now. I'm not sure any of that is conducive to teaching and learning. And we may not be in an ideal situation with remote, we're not, but we're in a much safer situation than if we bring these kids back into the classroom at this time. I think that we need to extend remote a little bit longer until we are completely, fully ready to invite students and teachers back into the classrooms in a safe way. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you, Deb. Owen Murphy?
Hold on, got it.
Belle, will you plug my phone in? It just died.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So last week, 167 parents presented you with a petition asking you to look at moving up the dates, and you didn't act last week. I wish you had, but I'm glad that you're acting this week, and it's nice to see that at least for the middle school kids, that the plan can be changed, that the plan is capable of adjustment. When you look at our plan compared to other schools' plans, there's 3 main things that stand out where we're a bit of an outlier. Actually, more than a bit. One is our extremely late start. So we have actually had more time to plan this than any other town did. It's never going to be perfect, but if there's more questions, we can ask all the other towns that are having schools now and are not having outbreaks. 2, many other towns are separating the younger kids, the kindergartners, the first graders, the pre-Ks. We're treating the kindergartners like we're treating the 5th graders, but we all know that 5-year-olds and 11-year-olds are very different, have very different needs. The kindergartners need to be in school more. And the third thing is our plan, we have the hybrid, and then there's no other steps between hybrid and totally back to normal to pre-COVID levels. But in other towns, there's like different levels of hybrid. For example, in Concord, they started weeks ago on hybrid 2 or 3 days a week, and then K through 5 last week started 5 days a week. So sort of piggybacking on what Taylor said, once we get into school and we get our feet wet and we get the processes worked out, we really need to look at expanding the time in school as much as possible. The kids are better off in school. To say that hybrid is almost flawless is an absurd statement. For many kids, this is not learning. I said this last week. I'm not going to repeat myself, but the kindergartners in particular are struggling. Kids all ages are struggling. After they're looking at their iPad 6 hours a day, you know, they're dull, like they're dimmed, like they're not energetic kids like they are supposed to be. And I know it's not going to be the same as it was, but so thank you for adjusting the plan. And I would urge you that once we work out the kinks, I'm sure there will be kinks, that we extend it to give our kids access to their teachers that they need. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Owen. John, Erasure?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you all. I appreciate everyone's efforts. You know, I heard Dr. Ramden basically say to wear face coverings and keep your distance, which is what we've been doing, and I think what has been in place for the schools when it eventually gets to hybrid. You know, so it is in response to Mrs. King, you know, the superintendent's presentation kind of stated that there may be some cases, but there's not transmissions in school. So the protocols that are in place seem to be working. I believe that there's a robust curriculum, but that also doesn't equate to the students learning. There's a big difference between being in school and being at home, and especially in the elementary level, where, you know, a second or third grader, you know, they're at home, they want to jump on the couch, they want to run in and out of the kitchen to get a snack every 5 seconds. Their brother that's in 6th grade has a break, he wants to be on a break too. There's many challenges, and I think we all need to understand and appreciate that. No one believes that going back to school now is going to be exactly like it was at the end of the school year last year, or the year before that. No one does. And we all understand that, and we appreciate it. But these kids need to get back in school as soon as possible. And I really believe that it's safe for the kids to go back to school if all the protocols are put into place like you should have them. I think it would be fine. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Anyone else see? I don't see any other hands in the public.
I don't think so.
Okay, at this point then I'll close the public forum. Pardon? Oh, there is? I didn't see it.
Probably, you know, with those someone. Sorry.
Oh,
I didn't do a
okay.
good job of that one.
All right, colleague.
Yes, Felix, it's my husband's name. My name is Hannah Denisevich, and I'm a parent of 2 Lowell kids. My daughter is in 3rd grade, and she's doing remote learning right now. Unfortunately, I had to pull my son out because he was entering kindergarten, and I believe that teaching kindergarten remote is almost neglectful, because that's the first year when they should be excited about learning. It sets a path, and the lack of socialization, it just like, I feel it's just so wrong. So he's going in person right now, and when I brought that to the kids, I had my daughter crying that she wants to go to school in person as well. She keeps asking me when we will go back in school, and I can't answer her this. And I feel like what I'm hearing in this meeting right now is all the excuses why we can't do this. And I feel like we're not saying like how can we learn from schools that are doing it already, from the private schools, from schools who were in person since July. I feel like we should be looking for solutions and not finding reasons why we can't move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So I don't see any other hands. Am I missing any? No? Okay, so I'll close the public forum. I appreciate all the comments from the public. And so I'm going to turn around and ask, open up for the school committee to have some comments here and pass along their thoughts. Let me start. I just want to say a couple of words just in context of that, and then open it up. I can't speak much louder.
I can't. Use your teacher voice, John.
Sorry, people can't hear me. They still complain.
Just muffled a little bit, that's all.
Is it? All
I
right.
can move it.
I can yell.
I can move it.
The context I want to make is simply that is to remind everybody and recognize that In August, we approved a plan.
We're fine.
In August, we approved a plan that had, recognized that there would be likely to be changes as we move forward, recognizing that this was a very kind of dynamic environment. And so, starting from remote, moving to hybrid, we did have, and we see it now in hearings from some of the principals and teachers about adjustments that they're making. And I fully expect that will continue on as we move forward, as all the educators adjust to even remote or hybrid, whatever forms that this takes. I think it's important to recognize that. And at the same time, though, when we came forward with the
Aaron
plan,
Cole said I was awesome.
Sorry about that.
At the same time, when we came forward with the plan, we did have in it some check mark points, if you will. And one of those was October 22nd, which is this Thursday, as a kind of assessment date to review. And the superintendent's been looking at certainly at a weekly, if not daily basis, monitoring all the things that the COVID metrics, making sure we have the things that we need for classrooms, et cetera. October 22nd was that assessment date that we put into the plan. So I do think that we have before us, the plan that was approved, and the superintendent has a modification to it. But I do think it's important that we respect that October 22nd date as an assessment date, and how we want to frame that will be kind of depend on our discussion, I guess. But I do think that it's important that that assessment take place on the 22nd. On Wednesday, the day before, is when the state comes out with some kind of review of the weekly metrics, and so I think that's an important time point. But I think from what the superintendent has said, I think it's fairly clear that if things move along the way they are, she's comfortable with moving forward with the plan the way it is, certainly at the elementary level, with the start date for the 27th. And then she's made a suggestion of moving up the middle school again, but that would be dependent upon monitoring all the situations as we move forward. So I just say that in context. So in that respect, I guess in my position, I'm thinking that the 22nd is an important date. So if we take have discussion today, I think that's fine, but I think we need to recognize that any decision that would be made needs to be done on the 22nd. So we kind of stay true to at least that part of the plan in terms of the timing, and provide the opportunity to review the metrics over the next several days. But so let me open it up for other comments from school committee members. Lindsay.
So first of all, there's been a little confusion about what it means to be muted or not on this call, so people know there's an OWL microphone in the room for anyone who's in person, and it's attached to my computer, which is why I appear to be not muted on the call and other people are. But for instance, when John or Dr. Galton have spoken, you can hear them because the microphone is picking them up. So if anybody's concerned about that, as it seems to be in the chat, don't worry. People can hear us. Yes. So in terms of commentary about how it's going and what we heard tonight, I can't help but talk about my own personal experience in my occupation. I work in schools in a different town, and students have been in the buildings for almost a month, and it has been a tremendous joy to see kids in buildings and learning with their teachers. The teachers feel it. They were really nervous too, and a lot of things that they didn't know and weren't sure about. It's working out, and it's hard, but a lot of things we're doing in 2020 and in the pandemic is hard and challenging and new, but masks are working. Social distancing is working. Young kids are wearing their masks and following protocols and following one-way signs in hallways. And the kids are all right. It does look different
And it's okay. I think that there's so much value to kids being in school, and I'm thrilled with how remote learning is going in Watertown. I think Watertown is doing a stand-up job. It is something to envy of other towns in terms of how we've implemented remote learning, and the work our teachers are doing is top-notch. And at the same time, I can still see that in-person instruction matters, and time in buildings matters for kids. And I've seen it in person in my own career. And I think that it's a number of people brought up the point that other schools and other towns are doing this successfully. And one of the valuable things I think we put into this plan was the ability to have some time to see what happens in our surrounding areas. And there's not disasters blowing up in schools. And they've been open for a while. And I think that there's a lot of value to having been able to see that. And I think we can successfully get kids in our buildings, you know, with the safety measures that we have really thoughtfully planned. And so just from that view, you know, I don't think we can continue to have these all or none conversations. I think we, like someone had just said, I think it's really important that we talk about how do we keep moving forward with the important task of having kids in our buildings and in learning. And at the same time, I think remote learning has been fantastic, as good as it can be. The only other comment I would say that I think would be helpful for us to understand some of the numbers is where Watertown's population is so small. I think a case count would also be helpful just to help people understand that number, because of 4.5 out of 100,000 is confusing for people who may not be as calculation savvy as someone who teaches math for a living. So I would just kind of ask for that to maybe be part of our information, that we list the raw number.
Thank you, Lindsay. Others want to speak? Kendra?
Can we just get a clarification of what are we like discussing, and then are we voting tonight? Like, I think there's a lack of clarity about what this discussion is leading towards. Could we just get that answer?
Because, well, typically we would start more with a motion and focus around that, but my sense of this situation would be, it might be better to just have a discussion to find out where people are, and then we build a motion at that point. So that's why you're right, it is a little bit different.
Okay.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to really, Lindsay said it well, just reiterate that. I appreciate and support the superintendent's recommendation to move forward with the move to hybrid instruction at the elementary school starting next week. And I also support the change of the bridge to hybrid at the middle school moving till November 10th. I think those are both really important moves that we need to make as a district. I think we've been thoughtful and careful, and it's time to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. Lily, you had your hand up. Was that you?
Yeah, I would actually really appreciate it if we could hear from Mr. Ramden about his thoughts regarding moving up the middle school. I mean, I just feel like as school committee members, public health is not any of our, you know, jurisdictions or background. I would just really like to hear the thoughts of our public health expert a little bit more.
Okay. Mr. Ramden, do you want to speak to that, or I'm not sure that's something you've been told about or thought about? I don't know.
Yes, currently I have no major concerns with this current schedule as it has been presented. As I mentioned, yes, we are in discussions with the school department. Dr. Gostin and I speak frequently. We probably have each other on speed dialings on our phones. So I think we do have a good command of it, and I do support the decision to move forward. Given that nothing is perfect and things can change, but we do have a 3-week window to adjust should things change.
So, Mr. Remden, would it mean that, would you think that making our decision or vote would be more in line with what Mr. Ports just suggested regarding waiting until Thursday for the next set of metrics to come out? And that way, if Watertown shifts, we're being responsive to that? Or have no concerns at all? I mean, I'm just kind of curious because.
I have no concerns at all at this time. Remember, we're moved from one category to the other by a 0.5. That is what kicked us out from green to yellow. And that is a very small number.
Okay,
And
thank you so
we're
much.
not seeing any major community spread. Everything is restricted to in-family and mostly people who have been going to gatherings outside of the community. But community spread has not been active in Watertown.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Someone else, David.
Yeah, so I actually have some points of clarification for Judy. So one is, and perhaps Mr. Ramsden also has some thoughts on Wednesday. I want to be very concrete about this. Wednesday, is it still yellow? Are we still moving forward? And if red, are we not moving forward?
So So I would say that what Mr. Ramsden has indicated and what has been advocated by both DESE and PPH is to consider 3 weeks of data. So, that's the problem, especially as Lindsay has pointed out too, the data will fluctuate from week to week. You could go from green to red to yellow to green to red, and it's when you are red for 3 consecutive weeks where, you dig deeply into the data, then you might want to move to remote. And the state has been pretty clear about the fact that they want you to think about looking at those 3 weeks of data. If we find that we went to red on Wednesday because there was an outbreak in a school, that might be different because now we're seeing transmission among students and that would call for a different decision. But if we're seeing red because the cases are starting to move up, there might be as we just mentioned, somebody went to a family party and there's a cluster that can be explained pretty easily, you're not going to be as responsive to move right into remote. So I think this is why it's difficult to have exact metrics and saying, if we're red, we're out. Or if we're yellow, we're in. Or if we're green, we should be every day of the week. You have to look at what's happening within the community before you make that dramatic pivot. So I'm going to just reiterate, I think that what we would do is look at the 3 weeks of data, and if it's showing that, or if there's something immediate that's a need that says that we need to pivot, we will. But let's give it a chance to see if we're seeing that's a consistent red, and then we would obviously consider moving into remote. I would also mention though that, if we were to move into remote, that doesn't mean fully remote. That means that we might not have, we might have what we have now, meaning high need students still might come in. So that's just another point that, just because you move to red doesn't mean that you shut everything down.
I just want to make sure that everybody is on the same page to understand, right? Yep. So the 3 weeks is important there, as are masks and so the social distancing. The second question I have, which is something that we haven't talked about yet, is when are we going to make the decision about the middle school specifically? If it's not tonight, right, and it's not Wednesday, or is it Wednesday, Thursday this week, or is it the week, Thursday the week before the 10th?
So
I don't have the dates.
Right. So I would simply, and I think there were some questions around, why even making the consideration of moving. I don't think I fully probably did a good job of explaining why it is that we're thinking about moving to the 10th. I think when we made the plan in August, there were parts of it that were great, and there were parts of it that, in hindsight, we probably should have thought a little bit differently about. And one of them is what I think almost every other district has done that's in a phased-in approach is you start with your elementaries for sure, because they are the most important group to come in. Then you move to your middles, and you work out whatever you need to work out with your middles, and then you move to your high. I can't honestly say, concretely why we just said elementary, secondary. I think it's just, for us, it made, we have maybe one middle school, one high school, let's do it together. But in hindsight, I would say that for us as a system, I think it would be better to try to phase them in rather than bring all of our secondary kids in on the same day. I don't think that that's I think that kind of defeats the purpose of why we phased to start with. And we cohort our middle school kids. So, you know, that's the other thing. Our middle school is a little bit more like elementary than it is like high school. So, you know, I think there's, you know, more issues or questions around high school because we don't cohort. So we got to make sure that we're, you know, really making sure we have the 6 feet and that if the kids are having lunch, they're all spread out, you know, you name it, or it's a little bit of a different situation, but our middles are more like elementary. So if we're cohorted and if the metrics remain, you know, in a place where we feel that we should move forward, then I think it would be advisable to consider moving middle school up.
So
That didn't answer your question.
When is the date that we're going to know that? We partly to Kendra's point, we need to let parents know, but but B, and teachers too, actually.
Right.
But B, we also just need to kind of know that we're looking toward something.
Right.
Because it's a little in the future.
Yep. So I think that putting it out there that is something that we would like to consider, meaning that we would like to open on the 10th. And just as we're doing with elementary and then high school, you know, the decision is made the week preceding that, whether the metrics support it or whether we think we're ready or whether we have the air purifiers or whether, you know, all those factors would be probably the most appropriate way to make that final decision if we move on the 10th. Lori did follow up to say that we do have, for all the rooms in the middle school that were identified as needing better ventilation, the air purifiers are in these rooms. So that's just a little piece that she sent to me.
And then the last question I have is just about logistics. And if parent, again, I think it's important to kind of remind people, if parents have questions, if teachers have questions, a lot of the things that I've heard tonight are operational questions, which don't rise to our level necessarily, or even to yours per se. I mean, obviously, they can bring it to you, but what's the recommended, how do I get my questions answered?
So I think staff members, I mean, I did receive Mr. Spitzer's list, and certainly we'll work with that with the elementary principals to try to come up with the answers to the questions. But, you know, usually it's within buildings that, you know, staff or parents usually reach out to the principal if they have very specific questions. I think the 3 elementary principals did a really good job in their s'mores, anticipating that, you know, whether we do or we don't go on the 27th, let's at least give parents information about some of the protocols around, you know, the school and the layout and the entry and the exit. So, but I think that would be the best place to go with the questions is with the principals. They're operating their buildings. General questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. Yeah.
I want to
Yes.
Yeah. And then this is a completely different almost topic, but just sorry if people are having trouble hearing me. Yeah, the question, my question is about the walkthroughs in the school.
Yep.
Are we still doing those?
Yeah, we can do those on the afternoon of. So I did take Amy and John through kind of West. It took us a while to get through there. But certainly we have them scheduled for Friday from 12 to 3. Okay. The after school time, I know some people wanted to come after school. I'm not gonna be able to do that now due to a meeting that we now have scheduled. So if you can make it from 12 to 3, that's great. If you need a special appointment, I'd be more than happy to take anyone around to the building. Okay. We were focused primarily on the Cunniff and I'd like to go to the Hosmer because those are the 2 swing spaces, which sorry, I know that time is late, but to the point of, you know, we are also space constrained right now because of the fact that we're in swing spaces. So I think it's really important to see what we've done at those 2 buildings for sure.
Okay, thank you.
What else, Mark?
Thank you. Thank you again for the presentation and many people who joined us again tonight. You just told us that Larry said you have enough air purifiers. The thing that's troubling me tonight about anything that you said is that we may not be prepared in some cases. So if we're not prepared in these cases, when are we going to be prepared? And how does that affect the plan that we voted on in August? So you don't have to answer now, but I do think that, you know, that concern's been raised more than once. I know this is not good for, you said it earlier, it's not good for anybody. Nobody's happy, nobody's gonna be happy. But at some point, we did vote on a plan and we have to move forward. We have to get these kids back in the classroom. I understand we need to keep everybody safe. That's the utmost concern of mine. So that goes back to my question about, my comment about making sure all of these classrooms are prepared. The other thing I heard tonight from Matt Rose, I think, was about it being 50 degrees in the classroom today, because we need to keep the windows open, and I know some of the classrooms here have the windows open. I'm concerned as we move closer to November, December, how is that going to affect the atmosphere for the kids, the teachers? So at this point, I think I'm somewhat comfortable that we have a plan in place and we're going to follow that plan, but we should be doing as much as we can to be prepared and telling us that the buildings are ready and everything is ready, and everybody feels safe. Not only our teachers, but the children and parents, because they're an extension of what goes on in the classroom. Those kids are going to go home. So I want to make sure that we've done everything we can to keep everybody safe. That's my number one concern.
Other, Amy?
I have to go over here. Do I need to bring my computer?
Bring it.
I feel like I'm echoing off mine.
Yes, you're 6 feet.
Okay, good. All right. I just wanted to everybody that was on the Zoom this evening, in the beginning, that wonderful presentation from our fifth grade teachers at the Lowell, and for Stacy Healer to open up Lowell School for us to come here this evening. I will tell you, it feels really good to sit in the school library of this kids. I'm sure my daughter will be jealous, but no question, we have heard every single concern and complaint from parents to teacher sides. What my concern is, we continue to sit over and over again for hours amongst hours, but we're not getting to anything. And I really think, as a school committee member, I was voted to do the due diligence to get kids in school. Like, that is the priority of a school committee member, right? I believe, I support the plan that we have in place. I know everyone is anxious. I would be just as anxious. I'm anxious. I own a restaurant where I have people come in every day. I have to put all the protocols in place too. I believe if we step into the role of teaching children back in school, like Lindsay said, we will become used to it, we'll become comfortable again, and the fears and anxiety may lessen for a lot of people. I'm just as nervous as everybody else is, and I know kids are. But when I have a yard full of fifth graders at 1:45 every single day, yes, they're wearing masks and yes, they're outside, but they need to be in school. They don't need to be in my yard looking for something to do. So I support the plan in place. I'm not sure if we're voting tonight either. It's kind of all confusing to me, but I support whatever the superintendent recommends. We've worked really hard. I keep hearing time and things like that. I think we've had a lot of time. I think we've had a lot of time to plan. I think we've had a lot of time to prepare. I still think the next date of November 10th for the middle school, that's still a month away almost. That's still a lot more time. And then November 27th is a high school entrance time. That's more time to plan. We have time. We have had time to plan. So I think if we use our time wisely, instead of sitting over and over listening, and I'm not saying complaints, we're hearing all of these things. They're not complaints, they're concerns, but I think we need to get some work done instead of just going back and forth. But
Right.
I want to say thank you to everybody.
All right, thanks, Amy. I want to make one comment in that, you know, when I think about this, I draw a distinction between the plan that we approved in August. We approved that plan. It's kind of the roadmap, if you will, of how we wanted to proceed. Recognizing when we approved that there would be a series of final decision making that would have to take place on a weekly basis because of the nature of this COVID and the nature of kind of getting the rooms in shape and all the rest. And there's no way as a school committee we're going to make those on a weekly basis. That's going to be the superintendent's responsibility, and we expected her to do that. That's what we hire a superintendent to do. And so that final decision making needs to take place, resides with her, following kind of this overall map that we have approved in August. And I come back to that October 22nd date as a key decision-making date that I think the superintendent will make based on the plan that we approved, the roadmap that we approved in August. The one adjustment to that roadmap is that's different in what you've talked about today is moving up the middle school a little bit. That's the only change really in the roadmap that we approved before. And so I think that does require, from my perspective, that does require some recognition and, whether we want to, focus on that and make any comments on that. We could do that tonight, I suppose, but I would do it in the context recognizing that the superintendent on the 22nd will review the metrics, will look at where we're at, and make a final decision as to moving forward. I mean, that's what we've hired to do, to follow the roadmap. And it could be that something will change and the high school will be later or whatever. We don't know. And if we have to get called back, we will do that. But we have to trust, I think, the superintendent and her judgment, working with all the other educators and her leadership team. So Lily was asking, so where do we end up on this? Well, I mean, there's a couple of different options. We could postpone, or we could meet on Thursday if we chose to, and have a discussion again about where the metrics are, or we could leave that final decision on the 22nd to the superintendent, because I think she's the one who will make that final decision. So that would be an option. We don't, meet then to have that discussion, or leave that for the superintendent to make on the 22nd. Lindsay.
I was just going to say that I don't think as a school community body we should be setting ourselves up to have a meeting and a vote every time something with this pandemic changes. I think, like you said, we approved a roadmap in August, and some of the primary language in that is that we need to be flexible and adaptable compared to public health data. And I think that if changes need to be made, or we're moving into a model that was already planned, I don't see the need why we would meet again and talk about that again. I don't want to have to call a meeting and take a vote if there's an outbreak in the schools and we have to close, just the same as I don't want to have a meeting and vote when we're going to open schools because the data look good and Dr. Galston talked to Director of Public Health. I don't really know that that's a school community's responsibility, and I think a lot of parents and community were kind of thinking it was a vote or something tonight, but in my opinion, I don't think there needs to be a vote. I think that we have a plan, we've heard a lot of discussion, and we have data, and we're ready to go. In terms of November 10th, again, some of the key language in that plan was flexibility and adaptability based on the situation, and right now, for weeks, it's been looking like we should be in schools and should be opening, and I don't really see that as it. I don't think it's an unreasonable conversation to have. I mean, maybe that requires a vote, but most certainly not another meeting about the 22nd, in my opinion.
John, thank you. I agree on. I don't believe that the school committee needs to take a vote every time a cohort goes back. We didn't take a vote when our high needs kids went back. We didn't take, we're not going to take a vote when middle school goes back and high school goes back. I do think that looking at what the presentation was tonight, I do think that parents should expect, and I expect, that the superintendent will make a decision based on the data on Thursday morning, and hopefully she can give us as much lead time as possible. So letting the community know on Thursday morning what the decision is. And based on what I'm seeing tonight, I expect to move to the hybrid model on the 27th of October for the elementary school. That is my expectation based on what I saw tonight. Again, I agree with Lindsay that I don't think that portion needs a vote. I would offer a slightly different recommendation for the change from the middle school. Since we did write those dates into the plan, and I agree that flexibility is really important, I do think it might be a good idea to vote the change in the middle school date. And so that we can hear what other people say, but I certainly think that making a motion to make that change tonight would make sense. But the other decisions in terms of looking at the metrics and talking to the, Mr. Ramden, those decisions should happen with the, from the superintendent.
Others?
I agree with Kendra.
Pardon?
I agree with Kendra. Absolutely. We probably need to, changes to the plan that we approved probably need reapproval. But day-to-day operations, what's being decided by the superintendent is certainly what we have hired her to do. Absolutely. So she should make the final call. We're ready to bring students in or not. But the roadmap, because there's a change, we certainly should be acknowledging that, I think.
Others? Mark, thoughts on it?
I mean, yeah, John, I mean, to me, I tend to agree more with Lindsay on this. We did approve a policy as well at our last meeting that did give the jurisdiction to Dr. Galdston to make these decisions. While I do understand it's a change to the roadmap, I also feel like it's a change to the roadmap, for families and for staff that might have also planned for childcare or planned for other issues. I'm not comfortable voting at the very least until Thursday. I want to see the metrics that come out next week. That would be 3 weeks in terms of the reopening on November 10th. So if we see that the metrics look great, or the same as they are right now, at least not dramatically increasing, I would feel a lot more comfortable taking the vote on moving the middle school start if we're going to vote on it. I'm certainly not feeling comfortable making that decision right now, especially because I don't feel like we have all the context and information that we need. We got the formal recommendation over the weekend, and I just don't feel like we've gotten, I certainly do not feel like I have enough information to fully make that decision. And as Mr. Ramden did say, our numbers are going up. I would like to see where they come out on Wednesday before making a formal vote.
Okay. Anyone else? Other comments?
Could I just add one thing to it? Even if we change dates, it doesn't mean that the superintendent doesn't go through that process that she's going to do every time we come upon this bridge question. So changing a date doesn't mean we're locked in and we're absolutely going back. It means we're going to consider it going back at that time. So I just want to make that clear that the superintendent is still going to continue to monitor the data no matter what. The only change is middle school will be considered earlier than it had been originally.
No, I think that's a very important point. Again, I come back to the October 22nd date as a date that we put in our roadmap as an assessment date. And that is a date that we will stick with as an assessment. We're not changing that. The question is, that's the superintendent's assessment to move forward. Now, even the middle school could change after that. I mean, the following week, something could happen that would make a significant change in that. That's conceivable. But I think that the notion of the roadmap was to say, this is kind of what parents can expect, what the educators, this is what you can expect if we move along in a kind of reasonable way and we don't have major swings one way or the other. So I guess I hear, yeah, Mark.
To your point, exactly. We, in August, voted a plan. Superintendent recommended that she might want to change the middle school. I don't think we should be voting and having a meeting every time we have to change something.
Right.
So I don't think that us having to, if she wants to change the date of the middle school, so be it. If she look at the numbers Thursday, if they're fine, she can do that. I don't think we should have to have a meeting and have a vote every time there's a change. I think that's not the role of the school committee at this point. We chose a roadmap to reopen. The superintendent will report back if there's a problem with the reopening plan. But I think that if every time we have to move something by a week, day, month, we have to have a meeting, it's not going to be productive of our time or the superintendent's time. You have to make a presentation.
Right. No, No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
I agree, Mom. I can't turn my computer on because it will.
Okay. So what I hear is maybe we don't vote at all. That we approved the roadmap, and I guess we're giving the superintendent the flexibility around the only change that's proposed for possible change would be with the middle school. And it would be her responsibility to make sure that the components are in place for that to move forward. I think she's heard from us here clearly that there's support to do that. You know, as long as things move forward, everybody I think virtually has spoken kind of favorably towards that. You know, again, as Lily says, assuming between now and then the metrics and the buildings are prepared, et cetera, assuming those are in place, we seem to be supportive of that. I think everybody wants to get students back into the buildings as soon as possible. Does that sound correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one other big ask would just be to give teachers time in those buildings before you're bringing students back, because my only concern is that it does sound like we're asking our educators to be virtually teaching on Monday and then pivoting and teaching in person on Tuesday. And I am concerned about that lack of prep time. You know, that's what I do as well. And it's really hard to pivot. And it does sound from hearing the educators who spoke tonight that they don't feel completely prepared. And I'm wondering if there's any way for us to give our educators, at the very least, some time in their buildings or to prepare, or with the technology, especially if they're simulcasting at WMS, prior to our pivots, whatever they may be, simply because I think that's going to be extremely challenging. I know it's been extremely challenging for me. So it doesn't sound like we've built in any time for that pivot to happen. And I'm just wondering if there's a way that maybe we could be a little bit more thoughtful about that for our teachers.
John, can I add one thing? I just want to be clear about what people should expect after this meeting, because there is miscommunication about is a vote is happening or isn't happening. So should parents expect on Thursday a decision from the superintendent about the elementary going to hybrid on October 27th and about the middle school potentially changing from a bridge to hybrid from November 30th to November 10th? Are those decisions going to be happening on Thursday coming from the superintendent?
I would say yes.
Okay, I just want to make it be clear with everyone that parents and families and teachers and administrators should expect those two decisions on Thursday as early as possible.
Which is what we said we would do in the plan that we proposed. That would be the 22nd of October, based on the assessment of where we're at and looking at the multiple weeks of data and our school preparedness, that yes, I will make that recommendation on that decision on Thursday morning.
Yeah, that's okay. The 22nd is consistent with our plan from 2 months ago. And so
and those two decisions. Okay, thank you.
That. That's right. And I guess I'm also just saying, I think to the superintendent, I think she's heard it already, that, you know, I think there is, my sense is there's support from the committee in terms of bringing students back as early as possible. And if that could work in the middle school a little bit earlier than the original plan, I think that's the support spoken for that. But again, she's going to have to look at those metrics and make sure the buildings are ready. Okay? So we don't have to take a vote. It was listed as an action item. Doesn't mean we have to take a vote. But that's okay. So I think we'll move on. Okay? All right. Thank you. Thank you for, you know, a challenging situation. But thank you for working through that. Next item is the approval of minutes, which is the school committee meeting on October 5th. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept the minutes, approve the minutes of October 5th.
Second.
Questions? Roll call, Amy? Yes.
Right. Mark Sedaris.
Lizzie Mosca. Yes. Lily Reed.
Yes.
Heather Foley,
Yes.
John Boyd.
Yes. Amy Donahue. Okay, thank you. Reports, we have Building for the Future, the elementary school project.
I won't tie up too much time, but we talked about the kind of last week. This week, I want to talk about Osmer because steel has started to be erected in Osmer as of today, and the steel will be coming every day, and we're still about 5 or 6 days behind what we thought we would be, but still an exciting time when you drive by it now. The Osmer's going to it's getting the same way that the Connect was, so it's really exciting. That's all in the elementary school.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions on the elementary? No? Okay, thank you. High school?
At this point, we continue to consider options for the high school. We had a community forum, and the school building committee met to continue looking at options at the current schools administration site as well as the high school. You know, at this point in time, the school department is starting to focus on the educational program. We have presented the educational program to the community, but now we are trying to translate what that educational vision looks like within the building. That work will be taking place over the next several weeks with a team from the high school. And I believe that we are in the first school building committee in November. We will continue the conversation around the high school. And as we move closer and closer to having to make a final decision about what the site will be. So we are at a pretty exciting time for the high school with hopefully some decision making in the month of December.
The only other thing I would add to that is because of the community forum and the school building committee the night before, the space plans that they're talking about fitting it in and talking about reducing sizes of buildings. And so that may, you know, we may have some extra meetings about that. But I also want to say that because we do have other challenges, they're trying to get Scott Dunlap maybe doing a presentation to the historical commission at the meeting in November, which also has to weigh in with these buildings. So there are some other steps, some other challenges as we move forward.
Yes.
Any other questions on
Ever come without challenges, right?
on that? Okay. All right, thank you. They're very exciting moving forward with both of those projects. Next report would be the school committee chair. I only have one report to make. I didn't mention this earlier, but actually just about 2 hours before this meeting, received communication from the Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education, Mr. Riley, which was a response. If you remember correctly, they had sent us a letter some time ago, basically asking why we weren't going in hybrid or going at some point in classroom instruction. They identified us along with a number of other communities. We responded to that and told them that, basically told them what we were doing moving forward, that we were trying to do what we felt was best in our community. I just got a letter and haven't really had time to process it completely, but like I said, just a few hours before our meeting from the commissioner, again saying, wondering why we haven't gone back more into the classroom. He makes the comment that he is concerned that the school committee, as he says, is not aligning its reopening plan with the kind of state health metrics and DESE guidance. And they do intend actually to initiate an audit of the district starting next week. Later in the week, they intend to send somebody to have a conversation to begin that process. So we will take that into consideration. Again, it's unfortunate to get it just a couple hours before the meeting, so we didn't really have a time to put it on the agenda, nor to really have a discussion about it. But it will be something that clearly the state is encouraging us to move back into the buildings as soon as possible. That's my report. Dr. Galt, Superintendent.
As it always gets to this point, I think I've done a lot of talking this evening, but I just want to, as I think I always do, thank the public participants, both in the chat. I know we've been trying to answer many of the questions We'll try to put something together and send it out. I know there's a question about when will families be informed. I'll send out an email on Thursday morning, and hopefully, given the fact that there are still some open questions, be able to embed some of those answers in that correspondence. And so once again, I just want to thank everybody for their participation this evening. I want to certainly, I said it earlier, but just really express my deep appreciation for the staff that are in our buildings right now, and certainly for the staff that are preparing to move into the buildings. I know this is a very anxious time. I completely understand that. But I know that not only are we doing our best to keep everybody safe, but in the end, whatever plan we land on, it will be successful. And we will do what's best by our students and our staff, and no matter what we do. It is a, for lack of a better term, it's a crazy time. I think I wish there was a roadmap that was already written about this. But we do what we do, what we think is best for Watertown, and I'm fully confident that whatever decisions we make, they'll be in the best interest of our students, our staff, and our families. But deep appreciation, as always, for the work that's being done. And thank you to the grade 5 team again, certainly shining and showing us what's going on. And thank you to the Lowell for hosting us this evening. Sorry about the 15-minute delay. We got to realize when we move into different buildings that it's not as seamless as it used to be. So lesson learned, and we'll do better the next time we move to school.
Actually, add my thanks too. We've taken over the library.
Yep.
But it's been great, and the presentations they provided were really great too. So appreciate that very much. Any new business? Okay, seeing none, just announcements. You already mentioned school building committee, a couple of meetings coming up in a few days, October 21st, 6 p.m., November 4th at 6 p.m. And then the school committee next scheduled meeting is November 9th at 7 p.m. We have our second public forum. Anyone wish to speak in the second public forum? I don't see any hands. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes. Lily Reed. Lily Reed.
Yes.
Lindsay Mosca.
Yes.
Deborah Foley.
Yes.
Marcia Daris.
Yes.
John Ford.
Yes. Amy Donahue.
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. All right, thank you very much.